And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center, 90 Waybossa Street, in the heart of the city we truly love, Providence, Rhode Island, the naked city, the city of 1,000 stories. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and as always on the mighty, mighty Twitter at @Coalition_radio. We continue our foray into interviews with individual candidates running for the General Assembly tonight. Joining me right now is Matthew Perry, State Senate, running for District 13. But a couple of quick comments. The silliness continues. Throughout the week, we continue to be treated to 2- and 3-year-old stories of candidates pouring oil into their backyard and who locked who in their locker and who knocked over whose paperwork at school and who had a crush on who in high school. That's what's happened to this election. It continues to descend not only just into irrelevancy, but actually into tragedy. Because this state is facing, well, we always say this, don't we? But it really is facing perhaps the most important election in its recent history. This election will dictate whether this state continues on its uncharted course into oblivion, using the failed economic policy of the 70s by Gina Raimondo, whether a treasurer with little or no experience in market downturns can begin to weather, if you will, the coming storm, as exhibited by the last few days, as our pension fund continues to, again, once dive into oblivion, whether or not our General Assembly will be up for the challenge of managing a budget that has become hallucinatory. $9 billion in a state that usually is not only last to lead, but first to bleed when markets and economies turn down. Those are just a few of the questions we're facing. Whether or not the Attorney General's office will have the moral support and strength to engage on issues like medical cannabis, mandatory jail terms, all the issues facing Attorney Generals nationwide, as we try to bridge the gap between what's happening in our urban core and the rest of the state, income disparities, opportunities for all. These are the kind of issues we face, and yet we continue to obsess over, well, frankly, nonsense. In this show, when we talk about being outrage porn-free, we are, in fact, outrage porn-free. The only time you'll ever hear me talk about issues like this is in the run-up to the show. As always, the rules of the coalition are clear. When it comes to candidates, we consider them to be patriots, whether we agree with their politics or not. Our job here at the coalition is not to decide who gets past the gatekeeper. The major networks in this state have made a practice, increasingly obvious in the past few years, of deciding who is up to their standards, laughable, as to who can participate in debates and public forums, leaving out valuable candidates like, for example, Dr. Munoz, who can provide us with alternatives and ideas. People who are on the ballot, who have met the requirements for the state of Rhode Island to be on the ballot. Yet, despite the fact that these are public airwaves, the major media efforts here in this state would tell you that they are not worth your time. Well, quite frankly, at this point, the major media outlets in this state are not worth your time. Come to places like this, GoLocal Prov, RI Free Radio, a number of great local blogs, and where you could actually engage in, well, discussions, well, that matter. So the rules are always very clear. When a candidate comes on, we're not interested in handicapping the election. That's what the major media is for. That's what they'll use all their precious little time they dedicate to news instead of, and then going back on to Dancing with the Stars or whatever crap they're spewing out this week. No, we do not handicap elections here. We don't want to know about a candidate's fundraising. We're not at all interested in the polls. Quite simply, we don't want to know if a candidate will win. We want to simply know why he or she should. And we give them the opportunity, the dignity, the platform to express their views on issues not only around the state, the nation, as well as an opportunity to discuss their own background and how they think that could help the state of Rhode Island. As I always say, someone a lot smarter than me once said, public service should be about helping lives, not getting one. And clearly, if you look up at Halitosis all credit to Rudy Sheiks, there are a number of people up there who, and let me tell you, a lot of folks who don't dabble in politics or aren't in the bubble think it's pretty rough up there. I spent a lot of time up there last session. It's worse than you think. So, it is with great pleasure that I introduce Matthew Perry. He's running for the State Senate in District 13, which is on Aquidneck Island. Mr. Perry, welcome to the coalition.
Thank you very much for having me, Pat.
Oh, absolutely, and thanks for coming out in studio. It's always better in studio. Mr. Barry and I met for the first time. It's been a hectic week in Coalition Land. Today, through the graces of Mr. Jim Hummel, I got to be on the Lively Experiment again for the 7th or 8th time. An opportunity I am always grateful for. The producers, Kim, and the entire staff at that organization are wonderful and truly, unlike all the people I was just ranting about, truly get it. They provide a forum where people are polite, but at the same time informed, and well, it's become a lot more lively since Mr. Hummel took over as captain of that ship. So I spent that. Then I met Mr. Perry at the Center for Freedom and Prosperity's annual luncheon, where we had a gentleman in tone on about economics under the Trump era. The libertarians were in the room were able to be polite. It's tough for us because we agree to disagree on a number of issues. And now,
well behaved.
There you go. Now, the Lively Experiment is simulcasting right now, so in possibly one of the most appalling coincidences in Rhode Island recent political history, I'm on the airwaves in 2 places at one time.
You can't be 2 places at once.
I am. I actually am. I'm on public television right now. Pretty nutty, huh?
Yes.
Go figure. So anyway, first of all, congratulations on the race.
Thank you very much.
We, as I mentioned in the run-up, we consider anyone who runs for public office to be a true patriot. And we'll talk about this because there's an amazing coincidence. I always talk about it, short of serving your nation's military and defending our nation, running for public office is the second most patriotic thing you can do. You've actually done both. So there's something to be said there, and we'll get into that. But let's talk about you're a lifetime Rhode Islander, or I should say a native Rhode Islander.
I'm a lifetime native Rhode Islander. I was born in Bristol, grew up in Bristol, and went to LaSalle Academy here in Providence. Joined the service when I was 17. Short of my time in the service, numbering a little over 6 years, I moved back to Rhode Island thereafter to Bristol. Lived in Warwick, and I've resided in Newport for the past 6 years now.
All right, great. Well, talk us about your early days. You went to LaSalle,
yes,
and then you entered the military right away.
I was in my junior year.
Wow. Okay. What was the motivation for that, and tell us about your military experience.
It's a greater calling to serve my community. I'd always known it from a very young age that military service was for me. I've been a volunteer my whole life. I've volunteered for Cogshell Farm in Bristol as a child, to being a volunteer firefighter in Bristol, and I've always been called to public service, and it was a solid fit for me.
Okay. What did you do in the military?
I was a Fleet Marine Force corpsman. I was a medic. I served in the most highly decorated company and the most highly decorated battalion in the history of the United States Marine Corps, the 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, Fox Company. Very, very, it's a great honor for me to be able to share that with people. And being a medic in that sort of a community, when you talk about the people that care enough to serve, we say, well, that's less than 1% of the population. Well, if that's the case, as a medic, I represent 1/1000th to 1/10,000th of the populace, having served in the Fleet Marine Force. So I'm very proud of that.
Now, if anyone hasn't seen the movie Hacksaw Ridge, they really need to. Tell us about, as a medic, I'm not even talking about the run-up in terms of him being a conscientious objector. That's a separate issue for a separate time. But the level of potential danger that you face, the level of real danger, I should say, that you face as a medic is unparalleled.
I would have to say in certain situations that is absolutely true. The thing, and Pat, this ties into a lot of the reasons that I'm even running. A medic, when you become a medic, and you earn the moniker of being called Doc, you become everybody's everything. You become their friends, you become their psychologist, their priest, their everything. They come to you for everything. And before long, it matters not any of your political differences or anything like that. When they scream Doc, when it hits the fan, everything goes to the wayside, and you could just go and you help. You do what you can do to help and to do no further harm. And as far as your analogy in Hacksaw Ridge, as far as him being a conscientious objector, I can't personally relate to that because, respectfully, I had no problem carrying my sidearm or my rifle. However, I'm here to tell you in certain situations those instruments matter not. It's what's in your heart and what you want to do to make the worst moment of somebody's life where they're screaming for their mother and God better.
Where did you serve? What parts of the world or country?
I did a counter-narcotics tour down in South America. I've been down to what I like to call a sandbox in the Middle East on 3 occasions. I took part in Operation Noble Obelisk. I took part in Operation Sea Dragon as well. There's only so much I'm able to speak about on those matters.
Okay. All right. So you've been
Operational.
Okay. So you've been operational. Okay. So.
But I have to say, Pat, there are tens of thousands of men and women right this very second doing the exact same job that I had the honor to do near 15, 20 years ago.
All right. But how do you, people in my position don't get to meet people like you very often. So I have to ask
and
you.
And vice versa.
Well, now guys like me are kind of run of the mill. This is kind of an unplanned question. How does one train oneself? And I have a cousin who was an Army medic. Train oneself to, even though you're carrying a sidearm or a weapon, your primary responsibility is attending to the medical needs of someone who's been wounded in combat. And no one takes a break in the action.
Correct.
No one says time out while we get the, this isn't a football game. We bring people out the field. How does one train oneself to perform that level of skill necessary to attend to someone medically, while at the same time be surrounded by that type of chaos?
At face value, Pat, I don't know. I know it's someplace you dig deep. It's someplace, it's something that can't be taught. It's instinctual. I've oftentimes struggled. I have a 70% rating for PTSD, and I go to the VA hospital in Providence, for better or worse, weekly. And one of the things that I've struggled with personally has been going from the dichotomy of carrying a weapon and being willing to do whatever you had to do to protect your Marines, and then a split second later becoming that humanist that you have to be,
right,
to convince someone that they're going to be okay to treat someone, to treat their medical condition, and go from being cold and black-hearted, the cold and black-hearted nature of having to be a successful warrior, to being a successful medic. It's very difficult, and it's something that, at least in my experience, it's taken some time to come to terms with.
No, I'm sure, and
I'm not really sure how. I'm not really to answer. I'm really not sure how you. It takes a lot of muscle memory, training, as far as, you know, I can still tell you a lot of my Marines, last 4 of their social, and the ones that were allergic to sulfa medications and morphine and whatnot, though you commit that to muscle memory. Some of your Marines, you commit their weight to memory, because if you have to calculate for medications, you know, they fall into an odd category. Right. That becomes muscle memory, really like anything else that a warrior has to do as far as their firearm is concerned or whatnot. It just, you don't even think about it. But to say that there are not distractions, in that you're not scared, and even petrified for that matter, would be a lie. And how one, it's just a lot of muscle memory. That's really, I guess, is the best answer. It's a great question. I'm glad you asked.
No, because it just strikes me, and these are all superficial questions because I did not serve. But I mean, ultimately, the nature of war has changed dramatically.
Well, it's funny that you mention that, because I don't want to comment on any situations that I myself have been put in, but of recently, and I really don't like to involve Hollywood in military affairs, veterans sort of affairs, but in a couple of movies that have come out recently, You see where youth, when I say youth, I mean civilian youth and
Right.
women, their lives being taken in battle. And I have recently had a couple of, just here in Providence, one of my Marines drove up with his son and his son was getting ready to join, and I said, I hate to ask you this question, and I couldn't personally comment with you. I said, but are you willing to not just, be involved in combat, but you realize that you may have to be put in a position to take the life of a woman or child?
Mm-hmm.
And they looked at me very, very abruptly, like probably many of your viewers are going to look at this, but people have to understand that our enemies are not fighting a conventional battle.
Right.
They're putting weapons into the hands of women and children
Right.
and sending them into battle.
Mm-hmm.
And though your morals automatically tell you, whoa, women and children,
Mm-hmm.
laws of armed conflict,
Right.
you also look at the 12 guys that they're pointing a weapon at that are your friends
Right.
and your buddies, and you took an oath to make sure they went home to their wife and kids. I'm here to tell you, you are probably not going to hesitate for a second, and you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. Are you willing to serve? And that is a horrific question to have to pose to people, because even, and I can't speak intelligently about this, but even going back into the Vietnam era, the Korean War era, those sorts of things were not commonplace because the civilians were considered off limits in all circumstances,
Right.
and the nature of that has changed. So even you have to ask a medic with a sidearm, not necessarily the platoon machine gunner, are you willing to put yourself in that horrific position? And that's the tough question that you have to ask yourself if you're going to serve.
Right, because you know.
One of the many tough questions you have to ask yourself.
Right. My father, sir, spent 4.5 years as an infantryman in World War II, and you're not given time to analyze a situation.
Absolutely not.
You are.
Plenty of time afterwards, I'm here to tell you.
Right. So, and I hate using this term because it sounds like I'm trivializing it, but in a number of other areas we talk about being a human jukebox. If someone pushes B12, you have to train yourself to be reactive.
Well, it's funny, in a roundabout way of answering a question you asked me just a couple minutes ago. We shoot at, or we train at silhouette targets.
Right.
If you see any pictures, they're plastic silhouette targets. There's a reason that they're shaped the way that they're shaped.
Mm-hmm.
So that when a real target pops up that is going to try and kill you and your friends, you don't think about it. Like you said, it's pushing B12.
Right.
You don't react to it, you don't think, your body automatically reacts. You don't have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the situation dictates what your reaction needs to be able to go home.
Right. And ultimately, that's when, if we can humanize the most difficult experience in the human experience, it's all that just wanting to go home.
Well, not just yourself. I actually posted a very wonderful video that Sebastian Younger put out. The subject was why veterans miss war. And what it basically boiled down to is that God knows, or whomever you pray to, nobody wants to get shot at. Definitely, you don't want to get shot, I'll tell you that. And nobody wants to watch your friends die. And nobody, okay, no matter how much they talk about it beforehand, nobody wants to take life. What you miss is that camaraderie and that brotherhood.
Right.
You are not necessarily friends with your brother, but you will do everything you can to save his life and make sure that he goes home to his family. It becomes something about much more than you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also, it ties into my candidacy from the point of view of what motivates me. Mm-hmm. I'm here to tell you, when the situation is intense, let's just put it that way,
Right.
and people scream Doc, I don't care if you are a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, a member of the Whig Party from the 1700s. All I care about is you called me and you need me. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know who you voted for. I don't need to know if you voted for me. I don't know if you were talking bad about me behind the barracks last week. I don't care. My mission as your medic, as your doc, as your representative is to be there when you call. I've had a lot of conversations, now it's not just Aquidneck Island, I have District 13 consists of most of Newport, only a very small section that is not, and all of Connecticut Island, which is Jamestown.
Right.
And I've talked to so many people, and the one analogy that I keep using, and it's kind of a loose analogy, but I've yet to have anybody really push back on this, and I think this gets to the general sentiment of not just people in Rhode Island, but people nationally. When you close your door, and either be yourself or your staff, your diligent staff here, I've learned that people, when they shut their front door, and they, at the end of the night, they go and they shut their bedroom door, in their private little world, and they crawl and they get curled up in bed, they just want to know that they can pick up the phone and call the people that have been elected to represent their interests. They don't care if you are a D, an R, an I, an L. They care that something has been shot across my bow, Mr. Perry, that I don't know what to do, and that they can pick up the phone and call. I've not invested a lot in card stock and a lot of these things that you normally see a lot of politicians hand out. I've had more success handing out that business card that I gave you and saying, have a nice conversation with a fellow Newporter or an Islander in Jamestown and say, just do me a favor. Don't throw my card out. Throw it in your junk drawer. If and when I get elected, that's my cell phone number, and that's not going to change.
Right.
You will be able to call you'll be able to call me directly, and I can't fix all of your problems. I'm not here to disillusion you, but I can point you in a direction. Hopefully I can say, oh, you know what? You're trying to get, say in your case for your father, you called me up, and you said, hey, Mr. Perry, I'm trying to get my father his veterans benefits. I'm going to say, you know what? That's a federal level thing. That's the Department of Veterans Affairs. But we have the director of Rhode Island Veterans Affairs, great gentleman, former Navy man. His name is Kasim Yarn. He's a Rhode Island Director of Veterans Affairs. Here's his number. Give him a call, but get back to me. Let me know how you made out. I can't get your father his benefits, but by making myself accessible to you to help point you in a direction, and there's a story behind that too, but that is something that motivates me greatly, is being able to be doc for District 13 again.
Right. So you have a real calling to help people.
I very much do, very much do. I've lived a life of volunteerism. Like I said, I started out at Cogshell Farm, taking care of everything. Everything from learning how to shear sheep to blacksmithing. Volunteer firefighter in Bristol, where I graduated the Rhode Island Fire Academy, and volunteered as a firefighter out on Block Island when I lived on Block Island. Okay. Recently, which I'm very, very proud of, because this falls into one of my many hopes for District 13, is I have volunteered over 5 years, 2,500 hours at Fort Adams building the museum and archives.
Wow.
So historic preservation is something that is very passionate to me. I worked very closely with State Historic Preservation, Rhode Island DEM as well, obviously, because Fort Adams is a part of the park system, the state park system. So I think that, and I thank you for noting that candidates, anyone who decides to be a candidate or run for office, that is a form of patriotism, because for some people, and I don't want to politicize too much here, but for some people, politics is just that. They want to be a politician, and they want the trappings that comes with the power of politics. And I myself, and it's what I tell people, and it's one of my campaign slogan, or my campaign slogan is, don't vote for a politician, vote for a veteran. If you want things to change, and of course I would like that veteran to be a conservative veteran, or someone that leans a little bit more towards the libertarian rights and personal property rights, but let's put on our socialist utopia hat on for a second, okay?
It doesn't fit well, but okay.
No, mine neither, mine neither. But let's yeah, I would just help them out.
Okay, so so in terms of looking for reasons to be of service to your community, you talk about you're right. There are a number of people in this in this game, and I've met most of them at this point. Who,
why do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, what's again? Help lives or get one. There are clearly people.
I'm not sure if I can use that as a campaign slogan, but I like it.
Well, it just makes rampant sense because there is a certain community that sees this as an way to build their legal practice. There is a certain part of the community that sees this as a way to extend their private business interests. There is a certain part of the community that enjoys the trappings, and then and I want to be fair because there's a number of legislators up there for whom I have philosophical disagreements, but are fundamentally good people.
Absolutely.
And some of the disagreements can be strong. In my case,
and they should be.
Right. In my case, the personal litmus test that I applied, fairly or unfairly, because for quite a while I was a single issue kind of guy. A lot of my public life revolved around opposing. I'm a libertarian, so I oppose governmental subsidies to any private organization. It's wrong. And the stadium was to me just a raging example of people feathering their own nests at the expense of government, and with people who had the resources, expertise to, quite frankly, do it the right way, which is doing it on their own. And so that litmus test I did apply. One senator in Warwick, who unfortunately was a progressive who lost her primary, was one of the few people to stand up and vote against it, whereas other folks who are self-described progressives, who are very quick to call out conservatives as Koch brother, dark money types, were quick to vote for, at that time would have been, anyway, depending on who you talk to and which economists, it went from a 40 to at one point $125 million subsidy for a private baseball club. And I find that the word
38 Studios-esque.
Yes, well, we called it 38 Stadium. I mean, it's hypocrisy at its worst. I mean, if you're a progressive and you choose that, okay, but at least be intellectually honest enough to espouse progressive causes when you're in the quiet of voting for something.
Absolutely, and I myself, I can tell you that my opponent, I am diametrically opposed as far as political ideology goes. But from what my research shows me, she has spent a lot of time doing volunteerism and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we would always have a common conversation about. But one of the many reasons that I'm running is it's an interesting thing that I've learned about my opponent. Nobody knows who she is. And now I'm not going to invoke her name and not to be a politician here, but the reason that I'm pointing this out gets back to what I mentioned about being doc for the district and being part of everybody's life. Teresa Paiva-Weed, okay, she was a senator for District 13. Mm-hmm. Just about everybody in the state, if not definitely everyone on Aquidneck Island and Jamestown, they at least know who Teresa Paiva-Weed is. They know. And the reason for that is she engaged. She engaged in the community. Agree or disagree, she was there and you knew who she was. Mm. I can't tell you how many hundreds, if not thousands of people have said, you know what, I have no idea who my senator is. Right. And you know what, I don't fault someone for not knowing who their state rep is, because not everyone is as politically active as perhaps
they're not
you
in the bubble like you and I.
That is the elected official's fault. That is her fault for not reaching out to her constituents and saying, if you have an issue, this is how you get a hold of me. I represent you. And that's one thing that, another thing that we can also discuss about navigating the political waters of the state, and me saying, vote for a veteran, not a politician, is I am on the Republican ticket, so therefore I lean in a conservative direction. But the bottom line, which I think is going to make me a different candidate than just about everybody else that I see, is the fact that I know in my heart of hearts with my integrity, when elected, I'm going to have to go to some of my fellow assemblymen and assemblywomen, Republican, Democrat, or whatever, and say, hey, listen, me personally, I would like to be able to support you on this, but this bill, it's not going to help District 13.
Right.
there is the conservative platform, there's a Democratic platform, there's a libertarian platform, but you know what? There needs to be a District 13 platform.
Excellent.
And that's not necessarily all one or all the other. And that's the one thing that I explain to people, that though conservative, leaning much more towards a libertarian theory, that puts us in a centrist category, where I'm going to listen to both sides, take it on board, and say, not what do I believe, but what do I believe is best for the constituents. And if that flies in the face of what, then it has to. But it has to be what's best for the people. Mm-hmm. And if more politicians would put themselves in a position of looking out what's best for the people in their district than what's mm-hmm. best for their party platform, I really think that we would all be a lot better off. Mm-hmm. I truly do.
Absolutely. Folks, if you're just joining us, I have Matthew Perry on. He's running for State Senate, District 13, which is a significant portion of Newport, and also as far as
beautiful Jamestown.
All of beautiful Jamestown. It is beautiful. I just went to a wedding there for the first time. It's a special place. He's joining us live in studio. You are in fact listening to the Coalition on the Worldwide Coalition Network here, broadcasting at the GoLocal Broadcast Center. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and of course on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. So now, are you retired from the military now, or what are you doing?
Medically retired. I have a 100% rating from the Department of Veterans Affairs, mm-hmm.
Which
has me in a retired status.
All right. So you've got ample time now to do the work.
Indeed.
And do the constituent service necessary.
Well, I do a lot of veterans advocacy work, a significant amount of veterans advocacy work. I have the unfortunately, I have to tell you, I lost one of the 6 Marines that I've lost that I served with. 2 of them have committed suicide, which is why I wear this ring. Have you seen these before, Pat?
No, I haven't. Explain that to me.
Folks, this is...
I've seen the signs. What is it, the 3069?
No, this is called a 22 kill ring, ladies and gentlemen. This is from the 22 Kill Foundation. It has nothing to do with taking lives. If you are unaware of this absolutely horrific statistic, 22 veterans a day commit suicide. And then just so you folks know, that is actually an inaccurate number, because there are, I believe it's 3 or 4 states that do not list suicide as a cause of death. So if you take your life with a firearm, it's going to be an accidental firearms discharge, not a suicide. If you see anybody, and Pete Hegseth on Fox News, you'll see, watch his right hand, he wears one of these. He was a platoon commander. But this is to bring attention to veteran suicide awareness. I was honored on the Senate floor by Senator Elaine Morgan towards the end of the session this year for trying to bring some more awareness in the state. Mm-hmm. There's some couple of great individuals. Steve Mondeka with the Combat Veterans Riders Association just did a great veterans run. And I've tried to bring a lot of attention to that. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of individual veterans that know that I do veterans advocacy work, that reach out to me on an individual basis. And you can ask my Kate, I'm off at all hours trying to help them get appeals for evictions, and making sure that they're getting their lives back in order. So yes, it's granted me the opportunity to help better the lives of my brother and sister veterans even to this day, hopefully.
Right. So those two rings represent fellow veterans that took their own lives.
This one ring represents two brother veterans, and any veterans that takes their life, one of the 22 today. Which is, if you stop, what grinds my gears about that is, we're losing more veterans, what we call in CONUS, in the continental United States. We're losing more veterans in CONUS than we are anywhere else in the world in any other theater of battle. And that, to me, it's very, and it comes back to what we were talking about Sebastian Unger's work about losing that sense of purpose when you get out. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to pretend to explain away the veteran suicide crisis, but the fact of the matter is we're losing more veterans in this country daily than we are in any other theater of battle, and that's unacceptable.
I've only heard wonderful things about the VA hospital here in Providence, but are there other things that should be done? Let's focus on Rhode Island. Okay. That can and should be done You know, and you always have to value someone like yours experience, who's had active experience, serving the capacity you are, willing to do this, you know, as a volunteer. I mean, that's astonishing. You know, particularly as you confront your own memories all the time. Are we doing enough for veterans in this state?
No.
What?
Now, don't get me wrong. What is being done? It's getting better. It is getting better.
Right.
We've got Brigadier General Rick Backus, retired Army, who's running the Rhode Island Veterans Home in Bristol. If you haven't had a chance, if you even just drive by the complex, you'd scratch your head at what an amazing job that they've done. Versus what the Bristol Veterans Home looked like 25 years ago, they've done an amazing job there.
Right.
But when you still have homeless veterans problems, when you still have female veterans issues that are not being addressed, Pat, unfortunately, there's some stuff that I think I put myself in legal jeopardy discussing with you.
Right.
If you're not aware, what I can talk about is I don't like being a victim. I'm a VA wait time survivor. This scar on my right cheek was due to a wait at the VA dental clinic. It's now being resolved in being resolved in district court, so I have to be very careful about what I say. But what you hear in the national news, what's not being covered by your CNNs and your MSNBCs, there are still wait time issues with the VA. They're trying, but there's still people dying. There are still people that are taking their lives because they had to wait too long for an appointment. The system is broken, and luckily we have a new VA secretary that seems very, very dedicated to changing things from the inside out. My problem with the VA, and I say this very humbly, and I actually, when I say humble, almost in an ignorant kind of way, to me, Pat, when I look at, let's say Miriam Hospital, folks that don't live here in Providence, that's another hospital here. To be a private hospital, you have a board of directors.
Right.
You have to have a media group. You have to have a marketing department. Okay, because people aren't just going to show up to your hospital just because they're sick. All the VA has to do is focus on health care. They don't have a board of directors. They don't have to market themselves.
Right.
When a doctor or a dental hygienist at the VA shows up at work on Monday, their schedule is filled. Their schedule is filled from Monday through Friday. They collect a paycheck every 2 weeks or every month. I'm not sure what the pay dates are, but and I don't mean to marginalize the work that they do. It's very important, and I'm grateful for the work that they do. There are a great number of patriots at the VA hospital as well that should be noted.
Right.
But when your only focus is health care, you should be, in my mind, the shining beacon on the hill for health care.
Right.
You know, we talk about Boston Medical and all these other major medical centers where specialists go to become the specialists that they are. They should be getting that education at the VA. The healthcare at the VA should be so down because they don't have to focus on anything else but healthcare. Yes, I'm not saying there's not a lot of admin.
Right.
But as far as like Westminster Street, which is less than a mile away,
right,
that's a different subject. Now you're talking about claims, you're talking about admin. When you're talking about strictly health care, from that perspective, why veterans don't receive the best health care on the planet based on the medical providers not having the distractions of what you would find in a normal clinic on the corner of the street or even a full hospital. So it's very frustrating. And it's also frustrating for me being a medic, knowing what happens in the trenches and knowing what should happen and what is not acceptable. And it's difficult.
No, you're right. And by all accounts, it's just a personal story. My father's going to be 95.
Thank you for your service.
He double Purple Heart winner. As when we were little, we used to joke about how my father would never go camping, and I asked my father that once, and he mentioned he went camping for 4.5 years once, North Africa, to Sicily, and then they toured the continent, and he was all set with campaign. Then I realized that was when I was younger and just starting to realize what he had faced. He talks all the time about being a statistic, that somehow he managed to survive being an infantryman for 4 years. I mean, a complete anomaly. Yeah, just
Absolutely.
Particularly shot twice. Firsthand, just the type of what happens to life life expectancy when you've been shot twice, just because of sepsis and any one of other a thousand issues. Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, what people don't realize too, and your father knows all too well, there's no rhyme or reason. Okay, if you're running straight, if you run left a little bit, you may have walked into a bullet.
Right.
That was not meant for you, that would have otherwise passed you. There's no rhyme or reason. So when your father mentions that about how I just a statistical anomaly, it's very, very
well,
true.
and there was an element even in World War II. This is a conversation we've just had in the last few years. The assumption has always been by the media that Vietnamese veterans were the first to meet political hostilities, and what they faced was clearly wrong on every level. But my father now will talk about going home and being one of the handful of survivors in his entire city, and going from walking past Gold Star House after Gold Star House. And back then, the phenomenon, I just saw Gold Star House with a Gold Star logo on it for the first time, really, in years, locally. But after World War II, you're talking about an astonishing amount of people died. And
the survivor's guilt coming home, I can't even tell you how to begin to wrap my head around it.
Right. And being confronted by a grieving mother who's wanting to know, and I will never question a grieving mother on any level. I don't have that, I just simply wouldn't.
Well,
but confronting him and saying, why are you alive and why is my son dead? I mean, that's... So he walked away from any claims. And what's fascinating is about a couple years ago, around 2016, the VA sought him out after 70 years. True story.
Do you know why I believe that, Pat? If you go on my Facebook page, one thing that in social media you scroll through far enough, going back, back a year, you'll see some of the pictures. A local Fox affiliate did a news article about it. But to make a short story long, you can see the scars, you can see the actual wounds on my face when it was all healing up. But I have to tell you, once that story broke and it hit social media, I got so many emails and messages from folks very similar to yourself that were saying, keep fighting. Don't give up this fight. And they would tell me a little quip or a little story. And one that keeps sticking out to me, because it had to be at least a half dozen folks, said that they fought and fought and fought for my father's or my brother's veterans benefits, and he died a day before his first appointment. I can pull them up for you right now. I mean, that's heartbreaking. And those are the things that motivate you to go, you know what, this is bigger than me. This is bigger than me. Yeah, I have to stay the course no matter how many times I don't have to. So hearing your father's story of after 70 years later, finally they get together. It doesn't surprise me. And I want to get out there, because I've never had a platform like this. And again, I thank you and the Jim Hummels of the world for giving this sort of a platform. I need to tell every veteran out there something that I learned from the VA themselves. No matter what when you serve, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, if you were in Grenada, okay, that is in and of itself its own. Money has already been set aside by Congress for each one of these generations. So if you're a veteran, and God bless you, because this is the true patriot in you, this is no, I don't want to get my VA benefits, I'm okay. Right. I make enough money, I fill in the blank. You are not, you're not taking advantage of benefits that have already been bought and paid for. So don't feel guilty about feeling that, no, you know what, I don't need to take advantage of these. You're not taking advantage of them. They're already in place. They're just waiting for you. So it just that there are these little tidbits that a lot of veterans just are not aware of. And the other thing is you're not alone. I promise you, you're not alone. You think you are, you're not.
Wow. Boy, compelling stuff. So what was the epiphany then? That magic moment where you said, "Okay, I'm going to run for office." What spurred it on, and how did you come to the decision?
Well, it was a two-part process, and I hate to start falling into the, well, let me give you two. But the first part was I had become friends with one of the, you want to talk about a great advocate for her constituents, Senator Elaine Morgan. Senator Morgan and I met, I want to say in 2015, while I was still doing the museum work at Fort Adams, and I got called out to give my opinion on a historic site out in Exeter. She gave me her card, and obviously I knew that I was first of all, I was very taken aback by that. I was like, oh, wow, I was one of my sitting state senators, I have their information. And I knew that she did not want me to call her about issues regarding my neighbor pooping on my neighbor's dog pooping on the lawn. That it had to be something important. And then I went through this situation with the Providence VA, and while this was rupturing on my face and I am on my way to getting a ride up to the VA, I called her and I said, this is what's going on. She said, oh my God. Much like I explained this, and she said, this is not something that I handle, but get in touch with this person and this person. And, you know, they'll be able to help you out. Let me know how you made out. And I remember feeling empowered from the point of view of, wow, okay, I've got someone is actually looking out for me.
Right.
And I started thinking about, wow, there's honor in that. And it ties back into my roots of being a medic. And then this can be a matter of conjecture, and please folks, hear everything that I have to say before you think that I'm, especially in this particular climate, talking badly about a particular party. It's bigger than that. The other thing, aside from that epiphany of constituents need to have accessibility, to have access to their elected officials. I had been trying, and by the way, this hasn't really changed much at all, okay? With my issue with the VA, with my scar, getting in touch with White House, Cicilline, with Reed, our elected officials, our elected representation, okay? I am a constituent. I am not a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a libertarian. I am a constituent at this point. I cannot get help from any of them. As a matter of fact, the advice that they give me is, well, you have an attorney, and by the way, I don't have an attorney anymore. I'm representing myself in federal court because no one has grapes in the state. I can't, they say, well, you have legal representation. We can't help you. Well, I don't understand. And the explanation that was given to me was, you already have a person representing your interests. If our office gets involved, we will be a third party getting involved to represent your interests, so we can't do it. Okay? Call me up and tell me I'm wrong, fellas. That's what was explained to me. So now I get rid of I part ways with my attorney, which is a whole other story, for about a year now. Still no help from any of them. So I'm driving over the Newport Bridge one afternoon, and I'm on the phone with my father, and I said, Dad, I said, they live down in South Carolina. Again, another lifelong Rhode Island couple gone down south because, not because they don't love the state or the view, they just can't afford to live in the state, which is awful.
Right.
But I'm on the phone with them going over the bridge, and I said, Dad, I don't understand. I said, I'm not being a blowhard about this. I'm being respectful. I'm getting in touch with constituent affairs. I'm doing everything right. And he said, Matthew, he goes, they're not going to help you. And I said, and I kind of laughed, said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm a constituent of theirs. He goes, Matthew, listen. He goes, they're Democrats. Now this is where I said, don't hear me out, don't get upset. He said, they're Democrats. He goes, right now it's an election year. He said, one of President Trump's major agendas is overhauling the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Right.
Making it better and fixing it. In an election year, these men will not be seen promoting or supporting the president's agenda. They're not going to help you. And that epiphany alone, and I could be wrong, maybe I'm missing a nuance, but I don't think I am. That mere epiphany, that it could be that insidious, that an elected official would not at least inquire as to a veteran's plight because of their political affiliation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that is wrong on all accounts. And in November, when I'm elected, if you didn't vote for me, I don't care. You're still gonna get one of my business cards, and you're still gonna know how to get a hold of me, because a lot of problems in life have nothing to do with political ideology. A lot of problems in life just have to do with life happens. Now, how do I fix this? How do I get myself out of this hole? Most people in this country, they don't want handouts. They're happy to help themselves. Just show them how to fish.
Right.
Show them how to fish, and they will help themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, I have found that, and I would like to be that conduit. And I, again, once I become your representative, and you are my constituent, you are my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I take that on as seriously as being a platoon medic. That you know, no, I have to be accessible and available 24 hours a day.
Right.
You know, I may not be able to get back to you. I might not be able to take your call at 2 in the morning, but you know, the approach to politics, I think, is just wrong. If I could share with you a story, there's a couple of anecdotal stories, win or lose, that I'm gonna take from this experience. One of the scarier ones, I mentioned that I'm an NFPA 1 and 2 certified firefighter, graduate of the Rhode Island Academy. I ran into Chief Brian Dugan. He's the he's the fire chief in the city of Newport. I ran into him by happenstance at a Kiwanis event where I was invited to as a candidate. And I had the pleasure of being able to sit beside him. And I asked him, I said, Brian, I said, you know, as a candidate, I have a question for you. Should I win in November, how is that going to change our relationship? In other words, how are we going to be interacting with each other at that point? You know, I have to imagine, and these are my exact words, I have to imagine that you're going to need me to help coordinate getting grant money for the fire department, coordinating with the other state Senate representatives and the like to work together with mutual aid and districting and these sorts of things in the fire service. He leaned back and he looked at me like I had 10 heads, not 3, 10. And he said, Doc, he said, I've been doing this for almost 25 years. Mm-hmm. He goes, not once has an elected official ever asked me what I needed to get my job done. I have had nothing but people tell me what I need to do, what I need to get done, and pass down mandates. And I had the most eye-opening, he gave me the most eye-opening conversation and education as to how mandates trickle down and affect him. But what I really took from that was, and I mean no disrespect to anyone that's serving in public office in this moment that is elected, but the fact that not one politician has reached out to the chief of fire services for a city to say, what do I need to provide you to protect our constituents, whether it be training, supplies for training.
What can I do to make your life a job better?
What can I do to help you save my life? Mm-hmm. I can't believe that not one elected official has stopped to say, Chief Dugan, what do you need? What do your men and women need that run into burning buildings? What do they need to do their job when everybody else is running out of a burning building?
Right, the closest thing to combat while living here.
I'd have to agree with you that that's a very good analogy. But the fact that no one has bothered to, and this cannot be an isolated incident. I have to imagine, and I'd love to see the comments in a day or two from across the country and the region, and also other fire service people that are probably laughing, going, "Are you kidding me, Doc? Sorry, Mr. Perry, that you're just now learning this, but we've known this for years." And that's a little disheartening, and that's one of a handful of things that I'm looking forward to working on and bringing attention to that. Saying, hey, you folks think that they've been doing okay all by themselves. You know what? Every now and then you should knock on their door or give them a call and say, is there anything that you need? Because the last time I checked, when I call you, you always come running. Right. So what do you need from me? Right. And the same thing goes for I have to imagine, for our law enforcement officials too. I just haven't had the pleasure of meeting with any of them.
Oh, it's compelling stuff. Folks, if you're just joining us, Matthew Perry, he's running for State Senate, District 13, is joining us in studio at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center. This segment, as are many, is sponsored by the Yacht Club Bottling Works, Rhode Island's boutique soda for over 100 years. Now, we're at peak football right now. Now, as the weather gets a little bit crisper, people are starting to have bonfires, outdoor parties, parties inside. We're going to get close to the playoffs. It looks like the Pats are going to be back in them. So you're going to spend all sorts of time and money and efforts really serving your friends, your families, your neighbors, you know, the finest foods, your own personal recipes. You're going to take a lot of pride in what you present to your family. And, of course, we are, incredibly enough, just a few weeks away, well, from Thanksgiving, where you will probably spend a week dedicating yourself so that your Thanksgiving dinner can be all that it can be. Well, don't ruin it by drinking the refinery soda. You know, yes, it might be 89 cents. Yes, it might have more caffeine than I can ever stand. But you know what? Yacht Club Bottling Works, Yacht Club Soda. It's a Rhode Island institution. But let's refresh, if you will, for a second, why it is. All natural ingredients. Locally bottled water from their source in Centerdale, Rhode Island. Real vanilla, real spice. It's a root beer that actually, well, tastes like root beer is supposed to. Their sarsaparilla and their root beers are my personal favorites, and they're good enough to sponsor indie media at a time when it's a challenge to go into a show that's as well often bleeding edge as this is, with a host who's got as much attitudinal problems as I do, all right, to sponsor us. So clearly they're concerned with the community. Over 100 years, Rhode Island's boutique soda. We've had a yachtclubbottlingworks.com now. They've recently inked a major distribution deal, so you're going to start to see it all over the state as they up their production. And grab a couple bottles. It's probably going to be the first time, if you haven't had it in a while, it's going to be kind of a throwback to when you were a kiddo. But that's what you should be serving with your holiday meals, your tailgating meals, your football dinners. You know, give it a shot. Buy local, buy natural. YachtClubBottlingWorks.com. We're entering the second part of the show, and I want to kind of turn the direction, if you will, to issues. Again, if you're just joining us, Matthew Perry, he's running for Senate District 13 as a Republican.
Probably.
Yeah. I met him for the first time this afternoon at the Center for Freedom and Prosperity's annual dinner. We had a cancellation, so I said, well, come in studio. Yeah, and it's worked out very, very well. And by the way, folks, we've only got 1 week left in the silly season coming into it. But if you're an independent candidate, you're not part of the machine, particularly if you're not an incumbent, feel free to reach out to me at coalitionradioshow@gmail.com. We'd love to have an opportunity to talk to you, even though the election, incredibly enough, is just a week or so away. And if you're me, it can't happen soon enough. But we talk issues here, so let's talk a little bit of issues. First of all, how's the campaign trail going?
The campaign's going well. As a first-time candidate, there's pitfalls. There's obvious ups and downs. Mm-hmm. Being a humanist, though, I enjoy the interaction with folks very, very much. Some of my more interesting interactions I had when I was getting my signatures, which is a whole other subject that I take a lot of pride in. I got 148 signatures myself. Right. Walking through the district, talking to people and whatnot. I didn't have a signature party. I understand that that's the popular thing that I guess people are doing now. Right. I don't want to have a signature party. I very much enjoyed meeting 148 individuals that I got a chance to engage with. Right. That's something that I've thoroughly enjoyed very much so far. Yeah, and your district is a challenge in a sense because while you do have an urban core in Newport, you've also got a lot of geography where it's fairly spread out. It is. there's also a very strong Democratic presence in Newport.
Right.
There's no question. But to touch upon that for a moment, I have told, and I had a very great conversation with several members of the City Council of Newport at the Chamber of Commerce meeting, and I've been very unabashed about telling people this. If you are a Democrat, you're a true blue blood Rhode Island Democrat, you hear the word progressive, you hear the word socialist progressive, the hair on the back of your neck should go up. And the reason for that is if you are a true Democrat, the socialist progressive movement is taking away from the Democratic message and the Democratic platform probably better than the Republicans could. And it's a true story. And just about every Democratic politician or has absolutely agreed with me. So yes, there's a part of being a conservative candidate in this particular district, at least in the Newport portion of the district.
Right.
I found that challenging. The first time in my life I've been told to go F myself.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
Really? Are people that rude?
Absolutely. Well, what ticket are you running on? I said, well, I'm running on the Republican. Go F yourself. Whoa. Huh. I was asked.
Well, that's actually pretty disappointing because.
You know what, Pat? I'm going to be honest with you. I think if you were to talk to a lot of candidates, and I hate to say that this has even happened to Democratic candidates, liberal candidates, but I've actually seen quite a few candidates post things on our candidate pages. Right. Group pages saying that, oh my God, you will not believe what this person. Actually, I'll tell you that, folks, a funny story, and please don't take this as advice. This might have been Billy Hunt, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, Bill, but he was going to drop off literature on someone's front porch, and they actually had their lawn sprinklers not only set up towards the walkway, they were motion sensors to track as. So
he didn't tell me that, so I'm going to bust his chops about that.
So actually, whichever candidate that was, but please get back to me. For some reason, Bill's name comes up, but just being told to go F yourself. Never mind. Okay, when I walk down this walkway, am I about to get hosed down by someone's lawn system? It's when you say it takes a patriot to run for office. That's across all party lines.
Right.
For you to take the time to literally lay it out there on the chopping block for the whole public to see.
Well, you're disclosing your personal finances, your public history. Your people are going to feel a right to intrude in your lives.
Oh, believe me, they do.
Right? When in fact you're just simply looking to act on behalf of the service. I mean, the founders ultimately believed in a government where public service was transitional in nature, where someone would come along and lend their expertise for 2 to 4 to 6, maybe 5 or 10 years max, and then move on.
Absolutely revolutionary. And this, if you put it in the context of the late 1700s, for a king, queen, monarch, dictator, fill in the blank, to say, you know what, I'm just going to have all of the power of this country, all the money, the power of the military, the power of the resources, and in 4 years, I'm just going to hand the keys to somebody else.
Right.
That is revolutionary in and of itself. That concept is still almost, people are still trying to wrap their heads around.
The peaceful exchange of power that takes place, particularly at the presidential level in this country,
is gone.
Yeah, on a physical level, it still happens. I worry about it greatly.
I do too. And there are many ways to go with this conversation. I almost wouldn't even know where to start, because the divisiveness with the 2016 election, being a political science student at Roger Williams University for a little while, you talk about past elections and dirty elections in the 1800s and what was printed. Folks, I'm personally of the opinion, I don't know how you feel, Pat, but the 2016 election will be studied ad nauseum for another 300 years.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I find frustrating, and this is not a taking sides thing, this is just, it is what it is, is that the Democratic presidential candidate for 2016 left themselves open to some very serious legal jeopardy in several things. When you talk about from the server to the dossier. There's several things. But here's the conundrum that I find ourselves in, Pat. Even though this candidate has opened themselves up to legal jeopardy and prosecution, and you can say, but the bottom line is they have. If President Trump were to get the Justice Department to truly press an investigation now, during his presidency, and by the way, he will be elected in 2020, but that's another subject. If he does anything during his presidency, can you imagine a precedent that will set, that the winner will have the power to go after the loser in a legal capacity because you can find some minutia. We talk about how it's going to be difficult for whether you're a liberal or a conservative to find people like Brett Kavanaugh to step up to public service again after what he just went through with the lack of due process. If someone were to go after the Democratic presidential candidate for 2016, and rightfully so, for some of the things that happened, I fear that it will set an awful precedent for the future of the office of presidency. And it's a very difficult line to walk, because in one line you say the law is the law. If I'm here to tell you, as someone who had a security clearance, if I got caught with one top secret classified fill in the blank email on my laptop, I'm going to jail for a long, long time. I understand that people want to see, hey, wait a minute, the law applies to everyone equally. That's it. But there are these nuances that have to be thought of. And yes, I think that after his presidency, I think that if she's still gracing the earth with her presence, I think that she should be open to legal prosecution. I do. The Trump presidency has brought a lot to light.
Right, and and being a third-party guy, I didn't vote for either, so I kind of have a unique bully pulpit on this.
Gary Johnson was on the ballot.
Yeah, I voted for Gary. I obviously didn't vote for Hillary or Donald. Having worked in a subcontractor capacity to the government a couple of times, I too am still continue to be astonished at what that whole server episode represented and how little accountability there was and how easily certain people dismissed it.
Yes.
Now, I mean, there are issues with our current president that I don't want to dive into, but you're right.
Know what? There's nothing wrong. I'll come out and tell you, I support President Trump, hands down. I served under President Obama, and I served under a portion for President Bush. As a fleet Marine, I don't have the pleasure of agreeing or disagreeing with you. I just respect the office. I disagreed vehemently with Obama's policies. I disagreed vehemently with Clinton's policies, but I served the office.
Right.
I served the office. However, on a personal level, I shudder to think, not because of a difference in political ideology. I shudder to think what would have happened if the Democratic presidential nominee had won, from the point of view of what would we not know? What would we not know? George Papadopoulos was on the news just this morning, and it's now coming to fruition that the original meeting that he had overseas that quote unquote got him into trouble was actually orchestrated by an undercover FBI agent. So even everything from the word go was somehow internalized by the people that are supposed to be neutral.
Right.
And this is another scary thing that there are probably well over 95% of law enforcement. They do their job. They do a very difficult job, and I don't have firsthand experience, but they do a very difficult job. Most of them do it well, but there's a small percentage that are in positions of power that can do things to manipulate the justice system that just fly in the face of everything that this country is built on. There's no insurance policies at the FBI. If you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, if you're an independent, if you're a libertarian, You serve the people of the country.
Right.
You don't have the right to, and everybody knows what I'm talking about, Peter Strzok and all that good stuff. You don't have that luxury of having a political opinion at the office. If you want to go home and rant and rave, if you want to, that's fine. But when you are investigating, when you are in a position of privilege, because you are going to affect people's lives directly, their livelihoods, I'm sorry, you have no business with a political opinion or a what did they call it, insurance policy.
Right.
And I believe that it was Mr. Papadopoulos that even said that he believes that he was the insurance policy that they kept referring to in these text messages. This is unacceptable.
Yeah, no, there's clear overreach on multiple levels in that particular time frame, in that particular range of issues that are just appalling.
But if I could, because and it's the one good thing is I love listening to everybody. So I enjoy debate. I enjoy healthy debate. I think it's required. And any candidate, by the way, or incumbent that refuses to debate, you are doing a disservice to your constituents or your potential constituents. Debates have been going on in this country since before we were a country. For you to not debate your opponent is just wrong.
Was there any attempt to set up a debate with your?
They would not. They had no interest in debate. Even though the previous Republican candidate tried to reach out, they would not debate him either. It seems to be, but you know, the conservative gubernatorial candidate, he refused to debate any of the other gubernatorial candidates in the primaries. Right. I think it's a bad practice. But with that said, to talk a little bit about local issues.
Yeah,
what's the district?
All right. So if you're, and by the way, again, if you're just joining us, Matthew Perry is running for state senate, Senate District 13, a significant portion of Newport and Jamestown. Actually, the entire island that Jamestown sits on, possibly one of the prettiest districts. But also, I mean, you're Newport in and of itself. I often refer to Aquidneck Island as Rhode Island's ATM machine. Let me say why.
Please, because I was going to bring this up.
All right, so there's an obsession and a power struggle in Rhode Island politics, because ultimately the state is focused almost exclusively on the urban core, and by that I mean, if you were to ask some legislators, you've got the Bucket, CF, La Prave, Cranston, and Warwick, and the rest of the state is just sort of a necessary inconvenience that exists merely to fund projects going on here in this part of the state. And I always found it humorous during the stadium debate where the mayor of Pawtucket, who I like on a personal level, would whine incessantly about Pawtucket not being taken care of. I'm like, really? All right, why don't you ask, I don't know, Warren or Newport or any of the other states? So Newport on multiple levels, I mean, it is, we know this, but I think sometimes we have to reinforce this. It's not just a tourist destination in this country. It's an international top 10 tourist destination by most experts in the world. And it brings in an enormous amount of money for this state. Now, let's take it one step further. The defense industry in Newport is centered in and around the Naval Warfare Center, I used to call it the Naval Undersea Systems Center. Right? So they have a new term for it now, right? So, the amount of money that's brought in through defense contracting, whether it be Newport, Middletown, Portsmouth, is astonishing. So when you look at this continued, I don't know, this willful ignorance of the issues surrounding Newport, and Newport, while being internationally famous for being the homes of the rich and wealthy, is actually one of the more challenged economic communities in the state, and has real issues with public housing, has real issues with the condition of their high school. While at the same time,
child welfare issues.
There's some tough challenges facing Newport. While simultaneously, this governor decided to put in extend the hotel tax into smaller destinations and home rentals, which strikes right at the core of a significant part. So this governor in this legislature sees Aquidneck Island as an ATM machine.
One of the things and there's a couple of subject matters there. First of all is the governor's decision with the hotel tax.
Right.
At face value, that obviously hurts the hotels of Aquidneck, of Newport, well, of Aquidneck Island, but in District 13 being Jamestown and Newport. But what I've learned from talking to our elected officials currently serving, in particular in the city of Newport, is this Airbnb concept that's hitting. Well, since the hotel tax, and with a hotel tax, hotel prices are going to go up. More people are going to Airbnb establishments, and which is all well and fine, except none of that revenue really per se goes back to the state. Yes, in the form of taxes to the homeowner and whatnot, but the homeowner doesn't get the hotel tax.
Right.
And I'm glad that there's several things to talk about that are, in my eyes, issues in Newport. And I won't be able to touch on all of them, obviously. But one of the things I hate hearing politicians say is, I'm going to lower your taxes, I'm going to do this with your taxes, I'm going to do that with your taxes. When was the last time, except for the President Trump's recent tax break, but local politics in Rhode Island, when was the last time you saw a politician actually drop the tax rate in Rhode Island? It's not happening.
Yeah.
I am not lowering your taxes. I can't do it. I'm not going to run on that. But what I can run on is a point that you bring up, is that people look at Jamestown and Newport and Bristol also quite a bit, being very touristy places, as a piggy bank. And I'm watching tourist dollars go down a pothole-strewn road up to Providence to go in the general fund.
Right.
One of my goals is to get more tourist revenue to stay in District 13 in Newport and in Jamestown. Not in a selfish way, but to understand this, and again, this is something else, please understand and hear what I'm saying. We suffer through tourist season. And when I say suffer through tourist season, I mean if you work in the tourist industry, you need to that's where you get your income from. You work your behind off. You work very, very hard for 8 months out of the year to make your yearly income. So you suffer
Very
through
often, I'll call it what it is. It could be blood money.
Could be. But if you don't work in the industry and you live in Newport and Jamestown, you suffer through the traffic. I defy you to find one person that lives in Newport or Jamestown that hasn't had to slam on their brakes because a tourist walked off the sidewalk into the street not looking.
Right.
There are in ways we quote unquote suffer through tourist season. I really believe that there is a way to keep more tourist revenue down in Newport and Jamestown. That is going to fix your infrastructure a little bit. The other thing along those lines that we need in Newport that we don't have, and a good thing about Yacht Club being a Rhode Island-based company, you have to support Rhode Island companies. And the reason I'm going to tell you you need to do that is this. One of the things that would really save Newport economically, not that we're in great peril, but we're not doing great, would be if we found more year-round income.
Right.
If we had more year-round industry. There's such a focus on the tourist industry and only the tourist industry that there's not looking at getting year-round sustainable. Now it's getting better.
Right.
It is absolutely getting better. It's something that our town leaders, our city leaders are working hard towards. But you're right. The state is fixated on us being a piggy bank, which brings me to another reason thing that I'm passionate about. Now remember, the top of my list was being there for the constituents.
Right.
And that leaves a broad spectrum of problems that could come across your bow. You talk about Newport being one of the top 10 cities in the world for tourist travel and destination. There's a reason for that. And a lot of that has to do with the history of Newport. You can say the restaurants, and the restaurants are phenomenal. You can say it's because of the sailing. And the reason for this, if you don't know, Newport Harbor is one of the only harbors in the world that you can sail into no matter what direction the wind's blowing.
I did not know that.
Which is why you have the Volvo races coming here, and you've always had a great sailing presence.
Rich tradition.
Very rich tradition.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you're done sailing and you walk out of that restaurant after having a wonderful meal, from Brick Alley Pub or any one of the wonderful restaurants in Newport, what do? You walk around and you go, oh, look at that building. Oh, look at that statue. people are taken back by the history.
Right.
And if you don't preserve the history, that's one less reason that people are going to come. People are going to go, oh, I can get a great meal up in Boston. I can get a great meal up here in Providence, and you can. But one of the reasons that people come back is for the history. And if we don't preserve the history of Newport and Jamestown, we're going to find less tourist visiting and less tourist revenue. And historical preservation really needs to be a key component to every other little facet that we have, because it's a very large percentage of why people come to visit Newport and Jamestown for that matter.
Right.
And an interesting thing that I've learned, you asked me about my experiences, I had the pleasure of living on Block Island for almost 3 years. So I built houses out there, and it was when I first got out of the service. It was a good mindfulness exercise for getting everything. And the one thing I learned when you live on an island is the last thing you want is there's a term called a carpetbagger.
Right.
The last thing anybody that lives on an island wants is anyone, especially someone that wants to be an elected official, coming on their islands telling them what their problems are, what their issues are, what they need fixed. The last thing I want to do is go onto Conimicut Island. And by the way, Aquidneck and Conimicut Island, that's Rhode Island. Okay, many people know Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. Rhode Island is Aquidneck Island.
Interesting. Yeah, no, you're right.
Providence Plantations is all of the land that you see all the way around. Okay, I'm the oracle of useless knowledge, for what it's worth.
No, it's good stuff.
But in all truth, the heart of what Rhode Island is all started on Aquidneck Island and what and the like. And we need to preserve that. It's very important.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's part and parcel of the entire package. Now, there was a time before the current governor, and it's they perpetually.
There was a time before the
current governor. Yeah, it may not seem like it, but you're right.
It.
There was, where tourist bureaus were ultimately funded by a portion of the tourist tax. And that was largely where their funding was. And you had the people in Newport, the people in South County, the people in Providence run phenomenal operations. And here's the libertarian angle. The better they were, the more money they had. Now, obviously we're not excited about the taxation, but ultimately, let's ignore that for a second, but let's look at the fact that competence brought higher levels of funding. Great stuff. Now, of course, the governor moves a healthy chunk of the tourist development into the failed Commerce Corporation. What are your thoughts? I just believe, quite frankly, we need to get tourism out of a failed central government in tourism management, tourism promotion, and it should be brought voluntarily into the different regions so that they can do what they do best. And people, the years ago, I got to know people in Newport for the first time towards the end.
Good people.
Yeah, great people. When I got to know a lot of people who were opposing Mr. Paolino's attempt to carpetbagger to attempt to buy credibility with the Newport people. Did I say that? To decide to try to ingratiate himself with people who are wealthy as opposed to Nouveau rich. Did I say that? As opposed to acting like a human being. I said that too. But I got to know people in Newport well then, really for the first time, because I've never lived there, and I'm that guy who waits until, God knows I would never go there during the season. It's beautiful, but way above my pay grade. And by the way, Newporters have to suffer through that.
And most people don't really. Newporters can't afford Newport.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, and that's not a dig or anything. That's just as much as I would love. I do spend money in Newport. I do spend money in Jamestown. But I'm sorry, I'm not. You can't spend, what a tourist would spend on a bottle of soda. I can't spend on a daily basis. It's
right.
Not. And you know what? There are a lot of facets of Newport that people don't realize that once the tourists leave. And actually, the analogy that I was going to make is, folks, you may have heard of this country called Venezuela down in South America.
Yeah, it seems to be.
They're imploding. And one of the reasons that they're imploding is because they had a petroleum-based economy. The problem with a petroleum-based economy is it's based on the ups and downs of the oil market. And if one night you go to bed and the price of oil is $90 a barrel, and you wake up the day after that and it's $50 a barrel, well, your economy just took an incredible taking. By the same token, if you take that analogy and put it towards a tourist-based economy, if you rebase Rhode Island's economy only strictly, like you say, on tourism, you're setting yourself up for too many variables.
Yeah, I mean,
what if you have a summer with a lot of rain?
Well, you're
not going to get the same revenue coming into the state general fund as you would. You just can't count on it. You need year-round sustainable employment. One great industry that's being heavily overlooked in Newport is the fishing industry. The fishing industry in Newport, there's a big fleet in Newport. They fish year-round. There's fisheries. They change their boats up and whatnot to fish different fishes during different times of the year. You don't hear any talk about, with the exception of this afternoon at the gathering that we were at, anything about the plight of the fishermen in Newport and Jamestown and what happens
the plight of the fishermen in Rhode Island. I mean, we've got a state that again just sucks the life out of a variety of industries, because it just seems like the attitude is they've got some money, they show whatever superficial signs of success, and we double down on beating the economic snot out of them.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, there's such a disconnect with our current leadership between money and how money is produced, how wealth is created.
That's correct.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, until we somehow figure out a way to mix it up so that folks like you and folks who come from other backgrounds besides being union leader, and I come from a union family, but other folks besides lawyers, union leaders, lawyers, union leaders, and the occasional teacher, unless we figure out a way to mix it up and gain a perspective on fundamental economics, this state needs an economics enema.
Well, here's the thing: is you talk about socialist progressives, and you hear about the free college for all, free everything for all, and they coyly give you examples. I was speaking again. This was at the Newport Chamber of Commerce event with a couple of Democratic candidates from Jamestown saying, well, this is why we should have this social program. And I said, okay. I said, let's look at Denmark. I said, now Denmark is, generally speaking, a socialist country. Even though they have a capitalistic economy, they're a socialist country. How much are their taxes? Neither one of them knew. It's 55%. So you're going to tell somebody that's earning, just to keep the numbers simple, $100,000, and that's not me. I don't know if that's you. That's not me. You're going to tell someone born, bred, raised in America that when you earn $100,000, you only get to keep 45. Now, I would have to say that the benchmark, not the benchmark, but is if you're making $40,000 to $50,000 in this country, you can consider yourself successful and can live within your means, and hopefully you can live within your means and whatnot. That means by that same math, you're going to keep less than $25,000 if you make $50,000. Now, if you want to go with a socialist progressive, okay, my opponent, the socialist progressive movement, they're your people. Okay, that's who you want.
They're your peeps.
They're your peeps. But if you agree, and I agree, there need to be social programs. There's no question. The scope, I think that needs to be limited, and how efficiently those dollars are spent, because social service dollars are precious. There are very few to go around that even do exist. So inefficiency with social services cannot be tolerated on any level. But if you want full, free, everything for all, you want the Bernie Sanders plan, you have to be willing to pay 55, 60% in taxes. And if you are, well, I guess that's the direction we're going, Pat. But God, I don't think it's not the direction our country should be going.
Excessive taxation ultimately dumbs down innovation. And what I mean by that is, as I like to say, I'm a capitalist. I believe that true free market economies, not the one we have now, but true free market economies and capitalism are the mechanism by which individuals reach their full human potential. What I mean by that is that people are ultimately motivated by self-interest to innovate there is always a certain amount of the pride factor, or do it because it's the right thing to do. But ultimately, the Paul Allens and the Bill Gates and the who's that guy at Facebook and
Zuckerberg.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Zuckerberg. I want to keep my Facebook account.
We haven't gotten Zuck yet, but you know, we across the board, whether it be medical innovation, the opportunity to personally gain from your hard work is what defines capitalism and what defines innovation. Innovation will not happen because it's simply the right thing to do.
Correct.
It just won't. And
innovation won't happen with handouts.
right. The fall of the Soviet Union, I am convinced, had far less to do with military might, other than the fact that, of course, that the Soviet Union had an insane amount of their GDP go towards military defense, but had more to do with the notion that there was absolutely no upside to take risks in the market and innovate. And innovation brings wealth and also improves the quality of life in ordinary individuals who had no connection physically whatsoever with that innovation.
Well, how about we take it just to another level, since you'd asked me and you brought up military service. And actually today at the lunch we kind of looked at each other and chuckled at this very subject. If you are socialist, if you are progressive and you are all about receiving entitlements and handouts and whatnot, and for the record, I'm 100% disabled, so I get a disability compensation from the VA and Social Security. So I receive entitlements, whether I've earned them or not. It's a matter of opinion.
An entitlement is something that you're given without an investment, right?
To keep it simple enough. To keep it simple enough. If you grew up in a childhood and a lifetime of entitlements and handouts and whatnot, what incentive do you have to join the military and protect our country? What incentive do you have to be a patriot and protect what it is that you hold dear? What incentive do you have to give your life for your country? Why would I sacrifice my life for my country when my country has just given everything to me? I don't need to do anything. It creates a little bit of a conundrum. And okay, well, who are you going to get in the military then? Just people that want to shoot other people? Because that's not why people join the service. They join the service to protect whatever it is that they hold dear. And not to pontificate too much, but folks, I want you to do me a favor. The next time you look at an American flag that's shredded, that's messed up, most people, Pat, will probably come at, most veterans or people that are strong, will say, you're being disrespectful to the people that shed their blood. No, that is one angle to go, but I want you to look at it this way. That flag represents you. That represents whether I or Pat or your staff or anybody else agrees or disagree with your political ideologies and your beliefs. That flag represents you. And if you're happy to let a shredded, torn up, ripped up, faded flag represent your ideals and your internal fortitude, look in the mirror. And I'm not telling you to love the flag. I'm telling you that the flag represents you and your ideals, whether they're completely opposite from mine or not. Think about that the next time you go by a public school with a torn flag. You go by City Hall with a torn flag. Whether that City Hall is run by the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, that flag is telling you, this is what we think about your ideals. This is what we think about your... To me, it's an indicator. It's a nuance, but it's an indicator.
Absolutely. We've got a wide range of issues I want to cover in the last 25 minutes or so. We've got facing Rhode Island, and we can just kind of go through them one by one by one. First of all, from an issues perspective, you've got education, you've got UHIP, you've got DCYF, you've got name it. First of all, I think it's fairly obvious to say that if elected, you would like to be on the Veterans Committee.
Without question.
Without a question. What are your other interests, though, in terms of committees?
I am anything to do with historical preservation, obviously. One horrible statistic that came across my bow, and unfortunately, if there's one incident in this state a year, somebody has to have a horrible statistic of being number one. Right now, unfortunately, Newport ranks number one in child abuse cases. That
I did not know that.
that is, it's been explained away 100 different times by a few different people, but the bottom line is if you're number one for child abuse, something is wrong in the system.
Right.
That is something that is on my radar and something that I would like to take on personally. That is, it would be a newer subject for me.
Right.
It would be a challenge. So if there were any committees that dealt directly with that, I would be very interested. And not to sound like just a simpleton about it. Other than the obvious of would like to be on the Veterans Committee, because I feel I have more to contribute as far as experience goes. To be honored, to be elected, to be an elected official, to represent the constituents of District 13, any committee that I was asked to represent, I would be honored to do. And I think that there's some people that would be, not to carry on because we only have a little bit of time, but the reason I say don't vote for a politician, vote for a veteran, is again, let's put on our utopic socialist hats.
Right.
If you found yourself up at the State House, which folks is just a stone's throw away from here, and we were at an impasse, and the speaker were to say, you know what, we're at an impasse. Raise your hand if you served. And people, in the Senate raise their hand, right? You guys, you go into that chamber, figure it out and come back. If anybody is good at coming to yes, generally speaking, it's the veterans community. Because the one thing that we understand is accomplishing the mission.
Right.
If the general mission requires that certain people have to sacrifice a little bit, we've experienced that firsthand. And we're not afraid to give up a little bit of the party platform to make sure that what's best for the people happens.
Okay. All right. What are your thoughts for example, on say economic development? What do you have any particular feelings about the Commerce Corporation, about Gina Raimondo, her plan? I mean, just what could the state do?
What could the state do aside from stopping to pander? I'll give you a simple, for instance, with Governor Raimondo's free college education for everyone, and there's some nuances in this that people aren't aware of. First of all, I find it interesting that she brings it up in an election year. And folks, I want you to also notice something. Notice how many roads are getting fixed and paved just weeks before the election. Do you think that's a coincidence? I don't think it is. Do you think it's a coincidence that Governor Raimondo, and I do say governor because the burden of leadership, no matter what your political party is, should we have a true natural disaster or, God forbid, a terrorist event, the burden of leadership is going to be great. So with that compliment being the only one to be had, when you pander to the voting age people of Rhode Island by saying, I'm going to give you free college, this is free college, folks. You can go to CCRI free of cost. Now, please correct me, Pat. I believe that this first volley was $2.8 million. Okay? That $2.8 million got pushed on to the students of the University of Rhode Island and the Rhode Island College students. Okay? That $2.8 million was paid by other Rhode Island students. Okay, so no one is getting a free education.
Right.
I think that's like, if you've ever heard the term, there's no such thing as a free lunch, there's no such thing as a free education. Margaret Thatcher very famously said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. You can't give away the colleges. There has to be a way to pay for it.
Right. I'm
all for social programs if they're sustainable. This is not sustainable when it's thrown on other people's shoulders. She didn't come up with a plan to pay for it. Like most people don't realize the Rhode Island lottery. That keeps your car taxes down. That keeps, it goes other places too, but that was designed for that. She didn't come up with a plan to offset these costs. She just came up with, hey, this sounds good, let's do it. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, no, it certainly doesn't. And, you've devalued the education in general by making it free. It would be nice if an elected official came along and said, let's try and create a level playing field so that everyone's got a lower tax rate, so we don't need to give. I mean, the notion, for example, with the Commerce Corporation, that they have to give out grants. I mentioned on Lively today that I call it the Pawtucket Paw Sox Participation Trophy. That Colette Travel, we get $1.2 million in a grant to hire 50 people. How about we do this? Why don't we make it easier by lowering taxes so that everybody can hire more people, make it easier to create business formation than just picking out the chosen few. If you think that doing the sidewalks and the roads are bad, she is handing out grants to small businesses like candy, so much so that the Rhode Island Association of Manufacturers, for the first time ever, endorsed a candidate because of her desire to help manufacturing. Her desire to help manufacturing is basically writing checks from taxpayer money and giving them out to the selected few.
But shouldn't a desire to fix and update manufacturing, shouldn't that be a part of the job description? Shouldn't that be something you want to do, you as the governor of a state? Or if and when I'm elected in November, shouldn't that be one of the things that I want? Is all I would want to do is, okay, how do I get manufacturing up? How do I get more money in my constituents' pockets?
Right, and the way to
make their life better.
And the way to do that is charge everybody less taxes, so that if someone wants to start a business, they do so on their own merits, and it's a meritocracy as opposed to, essentially a corporate welfare state, which is what we've become.
And the fact of the matter is you can say what you want to, but you don't have a job without a business owner.
Right.
You don't have a job without an employer. And if you don't have incentives to be an employer, people don't have jobs.
Right.
It's as simple as that. And that's one thing that I think is seriously being is just not being hit upon in this state.
No, if people who, there's two types of people in the world, those who have had to make payroll and those who haven't. And unless you've had to make payroll, you just don't understand the fundamental dynamics of how wealth is created. Now, every day, regardless of how you're feeling that day, the difference between an entrepreneur and an employee is that the employee can bag a day.
Yep,
and
that's right.
At a certain point, will still get paid. Whereas if the entrepreneur mails it in for a week, they're gonna have trouble.
Yep.
Because they're still gonna have the same bills and the same overhead and the same issues to deal with. So I always talk about the philosophy amongst people who own businesses. There's this common fiction that people who own businesses have these wonderful lifestyles. And someone asked me once when I worked for myself, they said, "Well, what are your hours?" And I said, "Well, if I'm awake, I'm working."
Yeah,
and of course, given that you've got a government right now run by people who've never actually had to generate wealth on their own, there's a complete ignorance of that. They just simply don't know any better. I mean, there are times when they're such simpletons economically that I almost feel bad for them until I realize that they are knowingly steering this state
into the dirt.
They simply have no idea what they're doing, and yet they've got full control, so they can act like they can. It's just very, very depressing. You've also got a situation with UHIP. I'm not sure how closely you've had an opportunity to study that, but what are your thoughts on the UHIP debacle?
I think it's just what you said. It's a debacle. It's yet another. It was a half-baked idea that could have been a good idea if it had been maybe a little bit properly managed or thought through. But I'm kind of tired. When you talk about UHIP and things like this, I'm kind of tired of seeing Rhode Island be a petri dish for every socialist program in California and in New Jersey. I mean, it's so true. And UHIP falls right in that category.
Right. In my opinion, the state of Rhode Island should never have gotten into the business of developing legacy computer systems. I mean, it's just quite frankly, the expertise simply isn't there. If for people who have that expertise, they're working in the private industry, it's a transactional environment. Outsource it just like you do. I mean, it's a commercial application.
It absolutely is.
There isn't a reason in the world why a company like
put out an RFP for it.
ADP, for example. I mean, we let ADP handle our payroll. Why the hell won't we let them handle our healthcare reimbursements? I mean, they're better at it. And charge us on a transactional basis as opposed to sinking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into an endless black hole. It's just, it's moronic.
Since you brought it up briefly, it's one of the things that grinds my gears a little is I don't like seeing the leadership in Washington, the conservative leadership, saying things like, we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. Okay, let's get a few things straight. First of all, it's not Obamacare. He even said, this is not Obamacare, this is the Affordable Care Act. But even Obama said, this is going to have to be revamped. We're going to have to relook at this. just like we've had to relook at Social Security and other programs. Any Sun Tzu, The Art of War, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Okay? Instead of being on making this divisive statement that we've got to repeal and replace it, that makes people think that we're going to take away their health care. Why not just be kind and go, hey folks, there are a couple of nuances about this that's not working for all. We're going to tweak this out a little bit, but you're still going to have your health care. I just have to put that out there, that you know, and it's with Brett Kavanaugh and Right to Life. Barth Bracey from Rhode Island's Right to Life, he came right out and said, this is not going to change Roe versus Wade, not in a million years. You know, people don't fundamentally understand things like Supreme Court justices do not unilaterally change the law. Cases have to make it through the criminal justice or through the justice system before it gets to their case. There's just too many misnomers.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of ignorance, which goes to the essential fact that if you're going to have public school, they probably should teach a civics course and you know, and actually give people an idea not only what their rights are but what their responsibilities are. Center for Freedom and Prosperity authored at the time a very controversial, but I think common sense approach to sales tax. They advocated either for the significant reduction or the elimination of the sales tax as a way of developing economic growth. What did you think? What do you think about that?
By eliminating, you have to have, if not the sales tax, you do have to have some form of income for certain municipal things. But having, Lord help me, his name eludes me, we just saw him this afternoon, Steve Moore, he even said today, you know, that basically the idea of if you tax people less, that's how they have more money in their pockets.
Right.
The fact that if you tax people more, that money doesn't go back into their pockets. There is some form of trickle-down economics, but not as much as people believe. So either eliminating or seriously reducing the sales tax, that's going to put more money in people's pockets because they're not spending more money.
Right.
To me, that's logical, but that's a very black and white interpretation.
What other issues do you think are critical right now in this election?
I really, and it's not just because of it's my opponent's platform, I really believe that people have to look at the socialist movement that's going on. If you look at San Francisco, who has created a bunch of wonderful social programs, right now San Francisco is spending tens of millions of dollars cleaning up feces and dirty needles, and it's bankrupting them. Okay, now this is a side effect of a really good idea poorly managed. And I don't want to see the United States of America turn into, oh my God, we've overwhelmed ourselves with social services and we're, much like they say the Soviet Union was crushed by the weight of its military, we get crushed by the weight of the social services that are just being frivolously handed out. Not that we don't need social services, clearly we do. The VA hospital is a form of social services if you think about it. It's earned, or you know, but nonetheless. But it drives me to at least put out the message to people that listen. If you believe in the socialist platform, please really take a solid look at it, especially if you consider yourself a Democrat, because a socialist progressive platform has nothing to do with a Democratic platform, not a thing. And I also would like people to know that, yes, I am a conservative, I am on the Republican ticket, I do support President Trump, but I want to be the Senate representative for District 13 because I want to represent everyone's issues. And the funny thing that I tell people when I give them my card, like I was telling you earlier, is I say, listen, you know what politicians do? They say, I'm here to represent your issues. Hey, guess what, Pat? Like he told you earlier, we just met today. I have no idea what his issues are. Insert joke there.
Yeah, I have lots of issues.
I don't know what all of my constituents' issues are. That's why I want them to have my phone number and my card. So you can call me and you tell me what your issues are, and then I can work on them.
Okay, that's pretty fair. How can folks read about your candidacy? Where can they find you on the web?
I'm on Perry for 13 on Facebook. I also have a very neglected Twitter feed as well. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I have a few folks. This is devastatingly embarrassing. It's at Perry 13.
Okay.
On Twitter as well.
So it's Perry for District 13 on the Facebook.
One thing, again, first-time candidate, you learn a lot of things about being. It's not good to have the computer dexterity of a lab rat when you're running for office. You learn a lot of things on the fly. But yes, you can learn more about my candidacy at my Facebook page. Feel free to message me, and I love interacting with folks, and I love healthy debate. I think that's what makes this country the powerhouse that it is people being born of free will and mind and spirit, and we need to keep that. And socialist progressive will take that out of your heart.
Gonna be busy the next week and a half?
Very busy.
Yep. Walking the
district, talking to folks. To be honest with you, I am mostly concerned with keeping my word. There are a lot of people that I've been wanting to get back with that signed that made it even possible for me to get on the ballot, that I feel obligated to get in touch with and thank them for their support and whatnot. It's just, like you said, it's a little bit different running for office. You learn a lot about yourself, you learn a lot about people, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't bow out. And I'm looking forward to the next week and a half, as arduous as it's been.
Excellent.
And I'm definitely looking forward to the 2 years after that, serving the people of District 13.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, absolute pleasure. Matthew Perry, State Senate candidate, District 13. There is an incumbent in place. This is not an open seat. If you believe in Mr. Perry's message, not only do you need to vote for him, you need to find a way to support him. You know, the message we try to spread here at the Coalition is to hashtag take it personally. Get off your butt, shut down the Facebook, go out. Listen, I did lit drops on Sunday, which essentially means you walk up and down streets, you smile, you wave, say hello. If someone's interested in talking to the candidate, you call them on the cell phone, you bring them over. But other than that, you're really just stuffing some literature in their door handle, so they'll have a chance to take a look at what alternatives exist for the current state of government in Rhode Island. And God knows we need them. So
Make informed decisions.
Exactly. So I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you so much. Folks, we're going to take a couple minute break right now. You are listening and watching the Coalition on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. These moments are what makes this show worthwhile. When you connect with a candidate, connect with someone who's got ideas and a passion and a willingness to engage for their own community, and that is what government was intended to be.
Absolutely.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break right now. Stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the GoLocal Live Broadcast Center in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. The Naked City, the city of 1,000 stories. This weekend really represents a true fall weekend. Now, it's going to rain like heck tomorrow, but there's still plenty of stuff to do because in my eyes, there is no finer way to spend an afternoon than at, say, hypothetically, a beachfront bar down in Misquamicut, Rhode Island, that, you know, depending on the time of year, is either beachfront or, as the ocean mist is right now, pretty much waterfront. So what better way to spend the day than listen to some music, have some live, you know, some brunch and some grub, and maybe the odd adult beverage or two. Of course, tomorrow is the first, if you will, Road to Liberty Forum that's being held by the Rhode Island Libertarian Party at the Warwick Crown Plaza. International economist Jeffrey Tucker, anarchist, cryptocurrency expert, foreign policy libertarian guru Scott Horton, published author, bestseller list, is going to join Eric Palmieri, the director of the Libertarian Party of Rhode Island. He'll be talking about the Quaker movement and property rights, and of course, Christopher Thrasher, who's active on the national scene with the Libertarian Party. The emphasis, however, is going to be on liberty, 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 as opposed to just, say, the Libertarian Party. Tomorrow we'll be treated, we've got Liberty Republicans, independent thinkers, anarchists, libertarians, and just about every person across the spectrum. One of the folks I'm looking forward to seeing again, who I just recently met, who's become a fast friend with, of course, is Alan Gibberti. He is the chairman of the Log Cabin Republicans chapter here in the great state of Rhode Island. Alan, thanks for coming on the air.
Oh, no problem, Pat. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we just want to talk for a few minutes. I want to give you the opportunity. You know, the last time you were on, we were obviously focused extensively on 2A and some of the issues with the LGBT community in self-defense. So it was very much a policy discussion on really what is, of course, our right by birth, and that's the right to bear arms and the right to defend oneself. I just wanted to give you a few minutes tonight to kind of squeeze in and talk about Log Cabin Republicans, your chapter, what you guys stand for, and what your what your thoughts are on the election right now.
All right, so Log Cabin Republicans. So we're the biggest organization representing LGBT conservatives and their allies. And basically, we stand for, we want freedom, equality for everybody. We believe in free markets, individual liberty, strong national defense, limited government, equality under the law, all that good stuff that Republicans believe in, but also looking out for the LGBT community's interest in legislation that's passed, and not so much, when I say interest, I don't mean like in favoring just, the deposit, but just equal and fairness across the board.
Okay. Now, how long has there been a chapter in Rhode Island?
We have had chapters on and off for a while. There was one here recently a few years back, and nothing since, and I just started it back up last year.
Okay. And how often, or what type of meeting schedule, or when do you caucus?
Meeting schedules are pretty flexible, once a month, but it's kind of like depending on who's working when. We're
I know how that goes.
Group, so it's easier that way.
No,
As far as going out and getting out there with people, depending on where they are, who they want to, you just head out individually on weekends and try to to support local candidates that way.
Right. So you're very much it's sort of like a focus group within the Republican world, if you will.
Yes.
Going into this year, what are some of the Log Cabin Republicans' greater concern, both locally and nationally?
Nationally, probably, I'm going to say a lot of the same things the Republican Party stands for as well. Like the Democrats, their big thing right now is health care. I mean, again, national security, immigration. I mean, I think it's huge just with the caravan thing that's going on. Locally, we have Rhode Island has been listed as one of the friendliest LGBT states in the nation, and it is, and I think a lot of us here in this community have gotten a little bit too complacent, especially when you have people like Gina Raimondo and people saying, how she stands up for LGBT rights and touts all this wonderful stuff when she does, but in effect, she hasn't really done anything. And then you have, again, the LGBT caucus with their statement on Alan Fung, which is more Democrat trying to give someone a bad name, being unfair and labeling something and trying to work on that whole, we're going to take him down because he's a homophobe or homophobic or anti-LGBT.
Interesting. So they're going after Fung now for being a homophobe?
I don't want to say homophobe, but I'm going to say maybe anti-LGBT, discriminatory at the least, which I believe their statement was. He peddles discrimination.
Huh. I wasn't aware of that, so I
was not aware of that either. I should have asked him when he came to one of my events.
Huh. Yeah, I was going to say, I've never met Alan Fung. We were a table away from each other today, with at the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity's annual luncheon. But I'm not aware of any policy statements he's made to. Now, I mean, is this attempt to co-opt the LGBTQ community again by progressive Democrats? When in fact, I believe we met because I saw the video of you chastising Jason Knight. Correct? Is this
Democrat? Yes.
So, what has the Democratic Party really done for the LGBTQ community?
They have pretty much said the lie that we are victims. We basically must rely on them, and they're the only ones who will take care of us and stand up for us. They've perpetuated that lie, so now that when they turn around and they say, this person's bad, yes, this person's bad, and the mob will follow along.
Well, I mean, I guess the same could be said true that in the past they've tried to marginalize the Libertarian Party in the same way, except that here's some. I don't know if I've told you. You probably heard me say this 20 times. The only openly gay presidential candidate to ever receive an electoral vote, by the way, was a Libertarian. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
I might have heard that before from somebody.
I do that because it absolutely confounds the folks who just are in lockstep with the Democratic Party and the LGBTQ community, even though, again, when challenged, they really, let's be really, really blunt. If Joe Biden doesn't essentially proclaim marriage equality support on behalf of a clearly uncertain Barack Obama, who has historically been against marriage equality and had made public statements to that effect, if Joe Biden doesn't paint him to a corner, is there any chance that the Obama administration would have been pro-marriage equality?
I don't. Well, was Hillary? No, not so much, because she defined marriage as between a man and a woman.
Right. And of course, her husband was responsible for that loathsome Defense of Marriage Act.
Yes, it was.
Right.
But they do credit Obama, though. I have had them credit Obama with making it go away.
Right.
I'm like, but the guy, I forget it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he basically had to after Biden painted him into a corner. The only Democrat that was actually legitimately pro-marriage equality was really Biden. And I will always credit him for that because, it's simply the right thing to do. And there are many of us who wish that Biden had been the nominee in the last presidential election as opposed to Hillary Clinton. So with that in mind, at what point in time does the Democratic Party think they have ownership of the LGBTQ community? And are we starting to see some of the same, I'll call it shaming techniques, where if, God forbid, you should espouse a different line of thought, and all of a sudden you're somehow, not part of the crew? Is that kind of stuff starting to happen?
Oh, that's already happened. That happened. That happened in 2016, right after the election. If you think differently, if you don't take things at face value and you question things, and you challenge the current doctrine, yes, you're out. But even when you present the facts, you're still considered, you're a liar. You're spreading propaganda to help, some dictatorist, rule for the downfall of my own people.
Right. And I was going to say, does it ever get personal? I mean, I just remember the Libertarian Party has marched, I believe, for 3 years now in Pride. And we were always happy to do so. We didn't make it to do it to earn points. We just happen to believe that individuals, as a libertarian, we don't believe that marriage is really, other than it being a property rights contract, is not the purview of government. That folks should be able to engage in a relationship with whom they choose, and should not.
Right. The House shouldn't sit there and vote as to whether they approve this marriage.
Right. I mean, it's quite frankly none of their damn business.
Yeah.
So we've always taken a that approach, and we were shocked after the 2016 presidential election when a certain notorious drag performer, who was at that point in time was acting as the, if you will, the DJ, the primary person on the review stage, and said quite loudly for all to hear that somehow the Libertarian Party had screwed their community, which I was astonished by. And that person was not on the stage this year because I guess she made comments to that effect. But a number of groups that may not have been fallen in complete lockstep. So I've, in a very, very small way, I've seen that sort of discrimination play out, which is troubling in a sense if folks are doing that, because folks who have been treated unfairly for generations, like the LGBTQ community, who've seen their rights taken away, who've seen some human rights taken away, and had to fight very hard for them, to engage in demagoguery against individuals who are simply speaking their own voice is always troubling. I would think, quite frankly, that the same type of diversity as we've grown up as a society, particularly in the last 10 to 15 years, that they would treasure that sense of diversity and would respect other people's opinions, even if they disagree with them. Wow.
Right. No, but I mean, before, when Obama was in, my political views were still the same, but it was okay.
Right.
Because they were in charge, and I was just whatever. But then after the election is when suddenly everything I always believed in and always said was somehow was wrong, and do I am I getting my own special suite at the concentration camp? I don't know what's changed, but I think the rhetoric being ramped up, the half-truths being spread, I think got to people, and they got used to believing things at face value because they've been spoon-fed it for 10, 12 years, that they just swallow it.
Well, that's
the most recent thing. Yeah, the most recent thing was the diplomatic visas.
Tell me about that.
What was that?
No, tell me about that.
Well, the diplomatic visas, what it was, basically, everyone started screaming because Trump was revoking the visas of same-sex diplomats because they had to be married. If they weren't married, they lost their visa, they get sent back. And that was, that was the whole thing. But what happened when gay marriage was legalized in 2015, then Secretary of State John Kerry basically phased it out because the visas for same-sex partners, marriage was now legal. So that's the definition of it. And then they're saying, what about these people who get sent back to their countries? Are they going to be persecuted? Okay, for a country to issue a same-sex visa to a diplomat for over here, they need to send documentation. A country that supports that isn't going to send documentation. So that's not going to happen. And if they can't marry in their own country, they can marry here in the United States.
Right.
And then their spouse would get their visa.
Interesting. Now, have you had success in terms of, and I know you're a relatively recently reformed organization, have you had success in getting any candidates to run yet, or is that still a work in progress?
Oh, I don't. I would say that a work in progress. I would guess. A lot of us are kind of under the philosophy like working from the outside is sometimes better than working from the inside.
Mm-hmm. Although it would be intriguing. Now I know there are a number of, what's a number? There are a few folks who are openly gay, who are serving in the state senate. I'm not sure if in the House, and it does give them a bully pulpit, if you will, to if you will, kind of ride herd on these issues and just kind of keep on, keep the community aware of them. So I mean, it's interesting because I guess I routinely circle around that same issue. Is it better to be a protester, and by definition being a third party person, I have to for the time being, or given the opportunity to work within the system, will that be more powerful? I'm unsure. I'm absolutely unsure. I don't know. I mean, it would be great to have the opportunity to work within the system because of the, let's just say, the respect that has to be accorded state representatives at some level within government because of nothing less than the funding issue. Which is why ultimately independents, Republicans, and libertarians need to develop some type of strength in numbers in the House, particularly in the House, so that there's at least a coalition that can discuss the V word, veto, on some of these crazy House budgets. Just absolutely crazy.
Yes.
What are your thoughts for it in terms of the election? What's is the log? I'm assuming the log cabin Republicans have endorsed Alan Fung.
Yes.
Okay. And
I mean, it's Rhode Island. I mean, it's anything can happen like between yesterday and today, and by the time Monday rolls around, I honestly don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be honest. I don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Now I've got to turn the tables on you because you put me on the spot on your show. And by the way, how can people listen to your show? I don't want to give you an opportunity to have a shameless plug here. When are you on the air? And how can people listen to you?
It's Rhode Island Red Radio. I'm going into the radio voice now. It's Rhode Island Red Radio on 990 WDOB.com. Mm-hmm. Monday nights at 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Excellent. And you've got. Do you want to tease us at all on who you've got coming up this week?
This week, I know I have. Oh, who's that? That nice fella. Daryl Gould is going to be on.
He's a nice fella.
And also I have an interview with J.T. Lewis, who lost his brother at Sandy Hook. He will be on as well.
Wow. Okay.
And the following night, wait, is that one? Nope, can't talk about that one. Sorry.
Okay.
Listening to them. Nope, can't talk about that.
All right, you'll tease us that, and you'll share that with me, so that I can, when you're ready to announce that, I'll give it, I'll give it some additional publicity to help you develop your show.
Thank you.
No, of course, indie media needs to stay together. It's always interesting that on the big players, they never want to mention, the other guys. That's a cardinal rule. In this town, there are too few of us fighting too big of forces for us not to respect each other's efforts. So it's to the degree that there's cross-pollination occurring, that's a very, very good thing. That's actually a wonderful, wonderful thing. National elections, what happens? What do you think? You're 3 or 4 days newer than I was, so we're getting close.
I think we're going to keep the Senate. I think we're going to keep the House. I think it might be close, but I think we're going to keep the House.
So
and I think all hell is going to break loose.
Because do you think it'll be so close that it's almost? I mean, the Republicans have been very difficult. I mean, Democrats are highly disciplined to vote only for to vote with their majority. Republicans are not so disciplined.
I mean, I think with the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation, I think that helped bring the party together. If they can hold on to that, that'll be good. Just like when they did the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, They banded together and it worked. And then, they did it again, like, in a year. So I think if they can hold on to that momentum and that feeling of, look, we did something good, I think it'll be a lot better. It's just getting them to stay in that frame of mind.
Right. Something that's not being discussed very much. I mean, assuming the Republicans maintain control of the House, who will be the next speaker, do you think?
I don't know.
I mean, I think it's a function of the national media. They're obsessing with the notion of Nancy Pelosi becoming speaker again, and yet there doesn't seem to be much conversation about what happens should the Republican majority hold true. I'm surprised I haven't read more. About that.
I think because not that it's a concern, but I think it's more of the fight of holding on to it is a little bit more important right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, yeah, they're going to want to know who, but I think just maintaining it is the main fight right now. And I think if you pick someone that some people may not favor, I don't think I want to throw that into the mix as well.
Okay. All right. Well, in the minute or so we've got left, and I appreciate you jumping on the lines with me, just kind of give us an update. Tell people exactly how they can find you in terms of your radio life and how folks can find Log Cabin Republicans.
We'll start with the radio. For the radio again, it's Rhode Island Red Radio on 990 WVOB.com, Monday nights at 7 o'clock. For the Log Cabin Republicans, we are on Facebook and Twitter, and it is at Log LOG, Road ROACE, and that's the best way.
All right, super. Well, Alan Gibberti,
right.
Thank you so very much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in person tomorrow at the Road to Liberty.
I will be there.
All right, buddy. Have a great night.
You too. Thank you.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break now. Of course, we are the Coalition. This segment is brought to you by Beacon Shipping and Logistics. BeaconShippingAndLogistics.com. Imagine a automobile shipping agency with international reach right here in Little Rhodey. They support dealer transportation of vehicles everywhere. Folks, if you've got that car that you're sending out to your college kiddo, maybe your kiddo's interning somewhere for a few months, the new hire, and they need the Aunt Bessie's old car, or maybe you're buying that car on eBay, or you're buying it from a dealer online because they've got that right color of Mustang and you need to get it shipped across country. BeaconShippingAndLogistics.com. Worldwide reach, professional service, accountability, financial stability, yet in a company based right here in Warwick, Rhode Island. They're our oldest supporter, and we're proud to be associated with them. And again, folks that support independent media need your support because they're willing to support programming that is, quite frankly, controversial in nature. We're going to take one last quick break. We're going to bring Alex Merced. He's the vice chairman of the National Libertarian Party. Going to bring him online for a few minutes of update about what's going on in the libertarian world because he is libertarian fabulous. Folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network. Go Local Live Broadcast Center, 90 Way Boston Street, deep in the heart of the city we love. Providence, Rhode Island, the naked city, the city of 1,000 stories. Now, of course, it was a city called New York that they initially referred to as the naked city. And some old-timey black and white television, and quite frankly, it was higher quality than anything we'll see today. Living there and simultaneously serving as the new vice chairman, or the recent vintage vice chairman, I should say, of the Libertarian Party is my good friend. I consider him a mentor and a role model. And of course, I'm talking about Alex Merced. Alex, you know, I had the opportunity to say this in person, but for the record, congratulations on rising to the vice chairmanship. It was a wonderful moment.
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually quite amazing. The response that the campaign had, the campaign focused on a message of positivity, of unity for the party, and basically that message went out, and that is a very positive sign that fills me with optimism for the party.
Yeah, I think we're all at this point in time. You know, it was a difficult 2016 election cycle. We've got some challenges going into 2018. But I think these are challenges that can be overcome if we can work to all be on the same page. What's the cliche? Row the boat in the same direction. Having someone like yourself who's got the credibility of being a long-term activist, you've run for office, you've done development, you've done outreach at the most extreme levels, but at the same time is universally well-liked and respected, goes a long way, I believe, towards accomplishing that. You know, we simply, if you're like me, and I was kind of one of the members, I'll call it, of the dissident wing, seeing you get elected was, after a difficult chairmanship election, was a good moment, absolutely a good moment. Now we're a couple months into this election season. We've got some significant races going on. What's your perspective? How are they going? I know we've got Larry Sharp, but we've also got people in California, New Jersey, suddenly New Mexico, as well as Arizona. So give us a rundown, if you will, of some of the races that are going on, and just bring people up to date, because libertarians are players now.
Got it. We got some really interesting races where some very big savings can be made. Of course, Larry Sharp's a big one. He's really put everything on the line in that race, and it's really amazing to see the kind of response he's been getting across the state. Like it's definitely something different. So how he does on November 6th, regardless of how he does, I think he's going to leave a mark on New York, and this is only the beginning of the Larry Sharp story. But there's also Lucy Brett in Indiana. She's polling very well. She's definitely going to affect the outcome of the race. Her popularity is only growing in Indiana, so that's really cool. She's going to be in some debates and found some really cool media pieces. Of course, Gary Johnson, who's been polling very well from the beginning, even before he got into the race. And it's really interesting because there's a good chance that he might. There's a chance he may win, but there's a very good chance that he would maybe even be in second place and make the Republican candidate third place, and that's amazing. And that's and that's a big deal because it shows that we can beat the major parties. We're building that wedge. And then there's a lot of other races where candidates are pulling beyond the spread between the Republican and the Democrat. Mm-hmm. And people say, "Oh, the spoiler effect." But here's the thing: that's a sign that we are growing, that we're affecting the outcome of races. And the path to winning, it's not a straight line path. You don't go from, not affecting the outcome of the race to winning. There's going to be a growth path in there, which we are going to be having greater and greater effects on races. And that means the libertarian voice, the libertarian message is going to require people to talk about it more, to address it more. So that's huge reasons for optimism on the effect of these, regardless of win or loss, what this will have on actually the libertarian discussion, on libertarian views being part of the discussion. But as a party, we have elections, but I mean, 2019, 2020, we'll have more elections, but those are the things that we can be doing, like ballot initiatives that we can be working on, community organizing. There's so many things that we are working on that 2018, the outcome of the election is really just the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a wonderful moment because we forced ourselves onto the national stage, just over the screams and the protests of the duopoly, they have to consider us now. And the minute we come up in the conversation, we can no longer be relegated to sort of the tired old cliches about being Koch brothers and the corporatists. As you know and as I know, that nothing could be further from the truth. Here in Rhode Island, people understand that the Libertarian Party is the front line defense against corporate cronyism and corporate welfare. And so, as that message resonates, we move into a central role in creating governments, and it's only a matter of time before we have that breakthrough. Here in Rhode Island, we've got 3 wonderful candidates. We've got Mr. Martinelli running for town council in North Providence, and of course we've got Darrell Gould and Billy Hunt running one-on-one against extreme progressive Democrats for the Rhode Island General Assembly. Rhode Island being as or even bluer, if you will, to use a common cliche, than the state of New York. We have that breakthrough, and then the dam bursts. Because ultimately,
Yes.
they just simply can't debate. I was going to say they simply can't marginalize us anymore. Now, I talk about Ms. Breton because she was afforded the opportunity to engage in a debate with the Democrat and the Republican, and quite frankly, I don't want to say out of nowhere because she's a serious activist. It has been, but in terms of the libertarian sky, she has become all of a sudden a very bright star, and just really. Just a real hope for that first wave of libertarian leadership. Talk about her debate performance. It was very compelling.
Yeah, no. The debate performance was awesome, and it was also her whole campaign. Like there was that one moment when basically one of her opponents basically says that they love Lucy too because her campaign slogan "I love Lucy," playing off the Lucille Ball show. Catches, and that's the kind of clever marketing that's really not only helps get people to click to actually look into sort of your libertarian views and your libertarian campaign.
Mm-hmm. We've also got California. How is that working? How is that going?
California, we have Jeff Hewitt. Now, Jeff Hewitt's really interesting because he's currently the mayor of Calamasa, Florida. And basically, he's running for Riverside County Supervisor, and he actually has a really good chance of winning that race. Also, you have the name's escaping me at the moment, but basically, that is one of the races that we have a strong chance of winning. Now, actually, making probably one of the highest level elected libertarians in the country if he wins that race, which is it's a very interesting race. We got a couple other sort of really interesting races like in New Hampshire and Nebraska, where basically if we can win re-election of a Laura Epke, Brandon, Caleb Dyer, Brandon Finney, basically that will make a huge statement because it'll show that you can be a libertarian office holder and be re-elected as a libertarian, which is one of the big fears of a lot of people who are libertarian currently in office as a Republican or Democrat, what's preventing them from kind of making the switch because they're scared that they won't be re-elected. This would be that signal and definitely really break that down for a lot of switchovers that can really help boost our numbers of elected officials and really boost our credibility going into future elections.
Right, and we're at a moment in the libertarian movement where a lot of people are watching a lot of people, which is why the duopoly is so deathly afraid of us. Because ultimately, once that first couple of cracks in the wall happen, then it will literally be the dam breaking. There are too many folks out there who started hidden, I'll just say, I don't want to criticize them because I'm with you and you're positive, and you're not you're the full guy as opposed to someone like me. But ultimately, that's been a crutch for people too. I can't get elected as a libertarian, and which is all the more reason why libertarians nationally need to embrace and support and both financially and spiritually, if you will, those people who are willing to conduct these type of quit your job, run for office, full-time campaign. I mean, these folks are groundbreakers. Larry Sharp is truly on the bleeding edge of the moment, a highly principled libertarian running in a state like New York where a guy named Cuomo has run the state house for generations now. And, quite frankly, self-describes as a liberal when he is my words, not yours. he has been morally bankrupted by generations of Cuomo's and folks like him in power. You know, some of the catches in terms of campaign finance law issues, some of his the cronyism that goes on in the State House in New York is legendary. You know, people like Larry Sharpe, we need to embrace because of the chances and just the sheer, I mean, the sheer effort without any guarantee of success that they're engaging in a daily basis. I mean, what's been impressive, what I worried about when Larry ran was it was going to be his ability to go statewide. You know, to a certain degree, I don't. Given the significant concentration of media in New York City, you know, you can get airtime, you can get a story out. All right, it's challenging, but nothing is more challenging than the vast open spaces of upstate New York. And Larry has been all over the state. The physical stamina he's shown and being able to run a statewide campaign for an emerging party has been nothing short of impressive.
That has been shocking, the resiliency and the stamina, because I mean, I ran statewide in New York a few years ago, and we made an effort to try to get out many of the counties of New York. But I mean, the effort that Larry Sharpe's put in is something completely different. It's something I mean, even if you take a look at like Republican and Democratic candidates across the country, I can't think of any campaigns that they've run where you're seeing people who traveled, held as many events, and really hit the pavement in the way that Larry Sharpe did. So I can't. It's really a unique campaign and a unique, you know, basically showing basically putting in the blood and sweat to show that he's earned a spot at the table.
Right. I mean, the word I'll use is Herculean. I mean, it's an absolutely Herculean effort from you know, he started at the right time, well before in the early days of the campaign. He did not wait. He's been fundraising since day one aggressively. You know, he's a principled, articulate libertarian. And for that alone, we should be eternally grateful because of our mixed success at the national level, espousing true libertarian values. And for that alone, bringing those values to dinner tables and meeting rooms and churches and halls and you know, and street corners in New York, in a place like New York, is again, Herculean is the only word I can come up with that even comes close to that. Now, we're also undergoing some changes nationally. The Wes Benedict, the longtime national director of the Libertarian Party, has decided to step away after dedicated years of service. What is that now? What happens now if you're a libertarian and you listen to this show in the coming days? Is there a process in place, or are folks still assessing it?
There will be a process. Basically, right now, Wes is still in charge. I think he's going to be basically making his exit, I think, early December, so basically right after the election. And then our development director, Lauren Doherty, will be acting as as temporary or interim executive director while the process plays out to select a new one. So right now there's discussions among the LNC, and right now, you know, our chair, Nick Sarwark, is running a very intense campaign where he might actually be able to cause a runoff and be in the runoff election come next year. So there's that. And Lauren, she's also running a very well contested campaign over there in Texas for Justice of the Peace, which is another campaign where she might win. So that will kind of, depending on how those races go, will depend kind of how that process, how the discussions will turn out. Because basically, once everyone is done with Election Day, then basically everything kind of shifts gears to, okay, what's going to be the process to select a new executive director, what's going to be our budget, what's going to be, because we have a budget meeting in early December. So basically, election doesn't also, I mean, Election Day doesn't just have an effect on basically our credibility as a party and big wins, but big wins can also cause big shakeups in our leadership nationally that'll cause some very interesting discussions on November 7th. So Election Day is interesting.
No, that's, you know, it's a culmination of efforts by so many thousands of volunteers across the nation who continue to champion the libertarian movement despite real institutional challenges. You know, as a certain person would say, it ain't easy being green. It certainly isn't easy to be a libertarian. And you know, I always want to salute the folks who have been at this now since the early 70s. There is still a core constituency of libertarian activists. There's certainly the elder statesmen and women of the movement now who have been there really forever. And you know, they're the ones who do the lit drops. They're the ones who do the tables. How many Venn diagrams can one do in one life? You know, for some people, I imagine it's in the tens of thousands. If there was a way to track that, it would be great, because I think we have some Hall of Fame players there. They're the folks who were there in the beginning when the movement was dismissed, you know, when it was regarded, you know, people pointed at us and kind of stared. And, you know, those folks really, you know, I wish there was some mechanism to really honor all of them en masse, because without them, it's taken us a long time, but without them, we wouldn't be a part of the argument like we are right now.
Agreed. I mean, it's been decades of a lot of hard work by a lot of people in a lot of places in a lot of ways, and you know, we're all standing on the shoulders of those efforts.
Absolutely. Now, as you know, we've got an event coming up tomorrow, and it's the first Rhode Island Road to Liberty forum. Chris Thrasher is going to be joining us. He, of course, was a very well-regarded candidate for national chair. He'll be actually talking about, and this is, excuse me, I can't wait for you to see the tape, because he'll actually be talking about what we're calling the morning after. What happens that next day? What do we do as a liberty movement to come together, you know, celebrate our successes, perhaps, you know, give each other solace over some of our wounds, and regroup as an organization. And that, to me, is going to be one of the highlights of tomorrow. And I know you're working on submitting a little statement that we can share with folks who are attending as well, and I certainly look forward to that.
Yes, so Chris, I say hi.
No, absolutely, and I'm hoping we can get you up here. For folks who are new to the libertarian movement, if you're part of the LNC, the Libertarian National Committee, and/or one of the executive offices, as you are the vice chairman, there is you've been rewarded for your years of effort and intense work with more and a higher level of effort and intense work. I don't know whether to congratulate you or give you a blessing. Probably both, because now you get to travel the nation. Unlike the big parties, I have to salute you and Jeff Lyons up in Massachusetts and Justin O'Donnell and everybody associated with the LNC, because ultimately you're traveling on your own dime. This is a volunteer effort on steroids. You know, by definition, there are meetings around the country, and you're, you know, despite the fact that you have family and a career, you're on call. You get, in the middle of the night, these lunatic state chairmen calling you with perceived biases and petty indignations, and you sit there with a smile, and you know what I'm talking about. you take the phone call. I guess in your first few months, what do you think after serving in this capacity?
I've enjoyed it so far. I mean, there was a lot to catch up with, like my own life after the convention. So
right.
At first there was a little bit of finding my sea legs, but I've had, you know, my first meeting since becoming vice chair. I felt that went well. I've passed 2 committee motions, so right now I'm the interim chair of the blockchain committee. We'll be populating the membership committee soon. I plan to probably be on one other committee. So I'm been working on that. I've been heavily involved with the social media team, being very active, especially on helping out with the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram of the party. And then also just trying to help candidates by creating graphics. And basically just doing all the other stuff I do, just doing it on a grander level. But basically I've just been trying to assist and also just offer the staff of the Libertarian Party help when I can. So I don't want to just be elected and just kind of go to the meetings, be part of a committee, which all of that is a lot of work. But I've also been trying to be really active and saying, hey, to the staff, whatever I can do to help out, whatever I can do, reach out to me. When when chairs have reached out to me, other party members, candidates have reached out to me, I've tried to do what I can. I sometimes, you know, life can sometimes make it harder for me to do as much as I'd like to do, but I always do as much as I can do. That's why I ran for the position. It just gives you, I wanted someone in the position who wanted to be sort of that, who was ready to just kind of embrace the party nationally and all together and want to help everyone out.
Well, we see the difference already, and I have a lot of love and a lot of respect for your predecessor, Arvin Vora. I really enjoyed working with him, and I look forward to working closely with you over the next couple of years. I know there's probably everyone want to take a couple of days off after the election, but you got to get right back on the pony, right back on the bicycle, and we got to get right back to it in anticipation of a challenging national figure, and and we have to continue to assert ourselves, and it's hard, but I have nothing but confidence in your ability to navigate those waters, and like I said, quite frankly, I look forward to working with you as we move forward.
Thank you. I always enjoy working with you, Pat. It's always a blast.
Someday when this is all done, you've got to give us the secret ranking of the difficulty factor of each individual state chair and where they really truly rank. I know some states are probably a little easier to deal with than others. Welcome to Rhode Island. So listen, again, let's. I look forward to getting that message from you tomorrow, and let's continue to work forward. All we want to do is take over the reins of power in this country. So what? We can leave everyone else alone, right?
Yes. Yes. and then once we accomplish that, then we can all take a break and breathe and enjoy freedom.
There you go. And that day we shall drink.
Yes.
God
Maybe a couple days before too.
God bless you, Alex Merced. God bless you.
No problem. Thank you. Bless you too.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll be talking to you really soon.
Talk to you soon.
Folks, we're going to, in respect to our ace producer, Joe, who decided to stay late the last couple of weeks, we're going to close off tonight just a couple of minutes early. Throw a wide variety of folks at you today. Spent a couple hours with, I think, a fascinating new player on the statewide scene. We talked with folks involved in literally every aspect of, I'll call it, of the rainbow, if you will, of political attitudes tonight. Folks, there's only a week to go before the election. We'll have one more opportunity to get together, celebrate, commiserate, whatever that is. But this week especially, take a moment and demand, be outraged if you don't get the information you need about the candidates you want to support on the issues. I've been following Rhode Island politics for a number of years now, and I can't think of a year when less attention has been paid to the issues, when there's been fewer debates, when there's been more nonsense, personal drivel, and, well, outrage porn and mental masturbation that's been ginned up by people in a desperate attempt to avoid just that conversation of the issues. At a time when the state of Rhode Island faces vast challenges. That's not being negative, that's being real. Whether it be our pension system, our infrastructure, our economy, our philosophy, our culture, all of those are under attack. We need, as a state, to buckle down and get to work. Fast solutions by fast talkers isn't going to cut it. Whether you're Jason Knight or whether you're Gina Raimondo. Sorry, folks, we're on to you. You may still win the election, but guess what? We're on to you. And we'll see you next week.